Growing up as an autistic person is challenging enough. Growing up not realizing you're autistic into your early 20s is a whole different level of challenge. You grow up feeling fundamentally different and not knowing why. No matter how much you try to fit in and assimilate with everyone, you still feel as if you don't belong, as if they can sense your difference, and you don't even have a label to explain why you feel this way. When you finally come to the realization through tireless research and exploring the autistic community, it comes with relief, finally having an answer. So many things clicking that you didn't understand for the longest time. Resounding ohs and that's why. But the relief is short-lived. You see, all you've ever wanted is to be normal. To just be like everyone else, to belong, to fit in. Realizing you're autistic means coming to the painful realization that you will never be normal, at least not in the neurotypical sense that you've been striving for your whole life. You must mourn this idea you had of yourself in your life prior to knowing. From there, more painful realizations arrive. You realize just how much the world isn't set up for your success. In fact, the society surrounding you works opposite to how you are, which you probably already knew experiencing it, but when you actually sit down and realize it, it becomes even greater of a realization. You become more aware of how the world is structured against you. Being autistic in a largely allistic society is a traumatic experience. At most times, it feels like everyone is against you, not even factoring in the large percentage of autistic people who are within the LGBT community, which only amplifies this. Existing in a society that scorns your existence and treats you as a burden does immense damage on one's psyche. What greater irony is there, then, in watching a movie because it relates to your special interest, only to watch a depiction of what being autistic is like unfold before your very eyes, as you watch your trauma play out on a screen, helpless, just like you so often feel in normal circumstances. If this movie functioned as a criticism of the ableism those who are autistic face, it would be different. Sadly, this is not the case. Rather, viewers are treated to 99 minutes of ableism that every autistic person knows all too well. It's not a commentary on why being ableist is reprehensible. Rather, it reinforces the common thread of ableism that runs throughout our society. No one in the film is condemned for their actions. They happen uncritically. No one stands up for our titular character. Neurotypical viewers may even find nothing wrong with how certain characters act towards him, at worst, and at best overlook the actions, as minor infractions at that. But those who are autistic watch through a completely different lens. The same things for them that aren't more than being brushed on the arm unexpectedly are like having a knife shoved in the chest of an autistic viewer. With all that being said, this is the story of the 2009 film Adam, which exemplifies the almost dystopia that those who are autistic must navigate in day-to-day life.
So I do trigger warnings like section by section in the video because I bring up specific stuff that I talk about. I need to do a massive trigger warning that I just, that those times where like your brain just skates over the obvious. So here's my obvious trigger warning for ableism. This is literally what the entire video is going to be about. It's a huge commentary on the really ableist movie. So if you cannot handle ableist themes, please leave. And if you can, and you just want a warning, well, here you go. Here's your warning. We are going to talk about a lot of ableism. But at least you have me there with you. When I watched this, I was alone. So if you choose to stay, hi, excited to embark on this journey with you.
Pause. How did I even stumble upon this film? You may be asking. It's not exactly a popular film. In fact, you probably don't know what this is. I didn't know what it was. So I really doubt you probably know what it is. So how the hell did we get here? Well, one of my special interests is Hannibal. I decided I was going to watch Mads and Hughes' entire filmographies. Is that not the most autistic thing you've ever heard? So it's something that I'm currently still embarking on. Adam was actually the second movie that I watched in this lineup. It was the first of Hughes' solo projects. The story of how I came to watch it is actually a sweet one, which only made the content of the movie more jarring. So I had actually seen an edit of Adam before I even really knew anything about it. I learned about the movie from the edit, and it was a really cute edit. I still have it saved. It made me so excited I was stimming because, oh my god, Hugh, who's like related to my special interest, who's a part of it, is playing an autistic person. And it's like, that is so exciting. I can't even describe to you how exciting and comforting that is. So like I said, Hugh Dancy, who is one of the people involved in my special interest, playing an autistic character, like, okay, we know Will is autistic, but this is like directly like talking about it too and everything, and like actually having more visible traits of it, right? So it's like breeding your own for like comfort, So I imagined that I would have like a new comfort film, and like I couldn't wait to watch it. And it started off all good too. I was beyond excited to watch it. So what has to transpire for me to go from
I love this movie. Honestly, I've seen 10-30 seconds of this, and it's already way better than that other movie I just suffered through.
to this?
Oh, Holy fuck, that was a fucking shit show. Like, oh my god. What the fuck?
Well, let's find out. I think a good place to start is the film poster. So let's take a look at the film poster. What does it say on there? A story about two strangers, one stranger than the other. Already there is the wording that Adam is strange. Why? Why is Adam strange? Who wants to take a wild guess? Why is Adam strange? Because he's autistic? Yes, that's what they're saying. That's literally what they're saying. I'm sorry, Asperger's, which, if you think we're not going to come back to that, we will be coming back to that. Trust me on this. Before we can really embark on the journey of the movie and the plot and everything, we need to introduce our two main characters, all right? So we have Adam, our title character for the movie, is named after, it's going to get confusing when I say Adam, so like there's a character and then the movie, so I'm going to have to try to be like, Adam, the film, Adam, the character. You guys will get it though, you're smart. So Adam's our title character. He is a 29-year-old man with Asperger's syndrome. He's an electric engineer and his dad has recently died. It is implied that his dad helped him out a considerable amount. His main special interest is space, but he seems to have a lesser one in theater as well. One of my special interests is also space, which is part of why I connected a lot with him. Mine is more of like an aesthetic special interest. As you can see, this is off script, but I have my Earth, moon, sun, there's a moon behind me, space, and then UFO. His like special interest, okay, so like there's this concept kind of that I actually recently learned about where there's like a couple different kinds of special interests. So like there's like an aesthetic versus an informational. If you didn't know, this will be interesting for you. Informational is like the typical way you think of a special interest, so it's like you need to know everything about it, you're very, very informed on it. That's how Adam is with space. He knows a lot. I actually, when it comes to space, I find all of that honestly boring. I'm more about like the aesthetics. Like I love the, as you can see, the outfit. I love like the fabric of it. I love the actual things itself. I don't care to learn all of the ins and outs. I don't need to know exactly how space works. I mean, I'm sure sometimes it's interesting. Other times it actually bores me though. Like I went to a planetarium because I love space, and I kind of got bored, to be honest, because for me, it's more of an aesthetic thing. Whereas Adam, like I said, typical special interest where he wants to know everything about it. But that is part of the reason I do connect with him, because we do share the same special interest. But I find it interesting that space is very common of a special interest for autistic people. Yeah, so like I said, it's very common. I also like aliens a lot, which relates to space. As you can see, I have the alien here. I have my alien headband. I have the alien thing there. Just a couple things, but yeah, which I also think is really common for autistic people too, in identifying as things other than human, usually as a result of feeling othered. So in Unmasking Autism by Devin Price, perhaps because so many of us are alienated from mainstream neurotypical life, we come to identify with fantasy creatures, aliens, robots, or animals instead of the people around us. And I, before knowing I was autistic, I would literally say, like, I'm like an alien, like, I feel like an alien. And I really bonded to this idea of being, like, from another world, being very different from everyone around you, feeling out of place. And I think that's really common for a lot of autistic people. And that explains my little outfit here. We got the space, we got the alien. I'm your autistic alien, and I'm bringing you information. We meet Adam and we see his life as an autistic person. And it's important to note that all autistic people are different. You know the saying, if you've met someone with autism, you've met one person with autism. Very different. So that's why when it comes to talking about stereotypes of Adam, it's kind of hard because, some people would be very stereotypical in the fact that they're like, symptoms or whatever they're dealing with is like very, very almost textbook. So it's kind of hard to classify, is it just that or is it a stereotype? We're going to try our best to do this though, and I'm just going to give you my perspective as someone autistic, okay? So here's what we know from the establishing shots. Adam lives a solitary life, which is actually a stereotype, but I find that very accurate for me personally. He opens the freezer to a bunch of mac and cheese frozen dinners, as well as a bunch of the same box of cereal. Now, when I saw this for the first time, I was floored, okay? Because I'm, very much similar to eating the same thing and like that too. So I was like very floored. For some people, I'm sure they think that's a stereotype. For a lot of us though, that is how it is. So these seem to be his same foods, cereal and mac and cheese. Primarily mac and cheese, but cereal occasionally. So as he's eating, he's watching space videos. Again, engaging in his special interest. Very common for us. Like, I'm pretty sure the autistic experience of just like eating your meal or snack or whatever while you're engaging in your special interest. Yeah, no, that's peak. That's heaven right there. So on the fridge, we see a chore chart, which splits up his chores between him and his dad. So this is a little bit confusing to me because I'm trying to figure out what Adam's like support needs are. And it's kind of hard because on one front, they seem to be low because he can do normal things, but on the other hand, they seem higher with like the chart. So it's a little bit confusing, especially with how Asperger's typically would be more of like a lower level. It's kind of confusing because the film seems to not be able to decide if it wants to make him like lower level with the high support needs or low support needs. It's a little bit confusing. So after his dad is buried, Adam immediately, what we can assume, falls into routine. He goes to mop the floors, which is indicated as a shared chore on their chart. He's also very logistical in the way that he crosses out his dad's name and resumes his responsibilities as if nothing happens. There's like the stereotype that like autistic people are heartless, but that's really not what it is. He is just doing what he knows. He's doing what's normal. He's being like pragmatic about it. It's not that he doesn't feel anything. Like, once again, this is a damaging stereotype that the movie enforces, but yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because a lot of people think, we're heartless. A lot of us actually feel a lot more than the average person. It's just, it's in different ways. Anyways, we're moving on. Adam's room has a bunch of space items laying around in it, and I think that's very common for autistic people. We often fill our spaces with stuff that relates to our special interests if it's possible, and I think that's pretty accurate because we want our room, of all places, to be a safe haven, to be comfortable, and our special interests often bring us a lot of comfort. His closet is highly organized, which for me personally is not accurate, so I can speak to that. I would say for a lot of us, organized chaos would be more accurate. For instance, my room often does look chaotic. This is not my main room, not this room, but there's a bunch of trinkets and stuff, but I know where every single item is, and if they're moved, I will know it. So it's interesting that the director chose this, since Adam, he's autistic, and usually this is like a stereotype for OCD, like the neat, organized, that thing. So I don't know if they're giving this to him as like an autistic trait and they think this is like an autism thing, or if they're mixing up OCD and autism, or it's just playing into the whole autism is rigidity type thing. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I'm not this dickhead director. We'll get into it, but I don't know. To me personally, it's more of an OCD stereotype, so I don't know why they gave it to him. Maybe there's some autistic people out there. I'm sure there are, because we're not a fucking monolith, that are very like straight up neat and like that, and more like bare bones rigid when it comes to that. But I think for a lot of us, we love our trinkets. So before we move on to Beth and the actual story of the movie, I want to answer the question: is Adam good autistic representation? Drum roll, please. Not the fucking movie. Am I allowed to swear in this? I'm going to swear in this. But the character is. In my opinion, yes. I've noticed a lot of autistic folks finding immense comfort as Adam as a character, including myself. He is a comfort character for me, and a lot of his traits are relatable. I remember at points also that I would react the same as Adam, which I thought was funny. There was this one scene in particular with the dad we'll get to, where where Beth tells him something, and I, before Adam speaks, said, well, did he do it? And then Adam quite literally, like, 5 seconds later goes, well, did he do it? The way that I can't even believe, that's hilarious. That's so funny. So yeah, I think it's really interesting how they created such a good autistic character, right? Like, such a good autistic character, but made his surrounding environment so horribly ableist, with no commentary on what that means. The jokes write themselves sometimes, truly. Beth, you may be wondering, Beth, what's her deal? Literally all you need to know is that she's a teacher and a children's book writer. That's it. That's literally all you need to know. Without his dad around, Adam struggles to maintain his living situation, which would make sense if his support needs are at least like medium to higher. But like I said, I'm trying to figure them out because the movie is really confusing on that. So mac and cheese dwindles in the freezer, showing that he's not going grocery shopping. Further evidence of his reliance on his dad comes with hangers in his closet becoming more barren. No laundry is being done either. And his brain is sticking to the routine, even though circumstances have changed. I feel like that's really common for a lot of us. It gets to the point that he visits the washing machine in a blazer with no shirt underneath. This is where Beth and Adam meet, aka the day that Adam's life goes to shit. I'm joking, but fucking God. If you don't learn now, here's your warning. Here's your warning now, okay? Here's your warning now. Here's your warning now. Beth is the fucking worst. Prepare yourself, because she's the fucking worst. This is not scripted. This is just me talking. She's the worst, and I am so enraged by her. Fuck. Okay, anyways. So, let's not spoil too much, shall we? Shall we not do that? Their meeting isn't substantial, although it does involve Beth using him for her own gain. His laundry card. They meet again shortly after while Adam is on the stairs. He's on his laptop watching a video about space. Beth says hi and he immediately talks about space. Beth says, "I always wish I knew more about space," to which Adam excitedly responds, "You did? Like what?" We see Adam genuinely excited by the prospect of getting to talk about his special interest, which is very common with people that are autistic. We love talking about our special interests, and we know the reception is usually signs of annoyance and people tuning us out. But when someone actually asks, it feels good. As we can see, Beth seems genuinely interested in his interests, which is important to us autistic people. Our special interests are often ignored, mocked, or made fun of. To have someone who actually asks about it and seems like they care is a rarity that we don't come across much. So was it really a shock that Adam clings to this and tolerates Beth's behavior later on? Not there yet, but right now we just have Beth showing interest, which of course naturally excites Adam. He even offers his space stuff up to let her borrow, which is incredibly generous, showing that he trusts her already. Many of us are possessive and protective over our special interests, and yet here Adam is willing to let her borrow stuff with it, and he doesn't even really know her. It shows his desperation for genuine connection that so many of us autistic people are starved for. However, despite it seeming like she cares, we do see hints at inauthenticity. Essentially tries to get Adam to carry her stuff for her in a passive-aggressive, indirected way. Adam doesn't pick up on it, and she seems annoyed as Adam continues to engage in his space video. When Beth returns, we see Adam people watching, which I think is actually a really common thing for autistic people to do. There's this want to know why and observe people because, we often feel so alien and outside normal human, experience, as well as just trying to see what's going on with people. And we also just have like a curiosity often, but there's also sometimes like this sense of like wanting to emulate it or, mask it, or just trying to see if we can find that one thing that just makes socializing so easy and effortless and natural for people that we don't, feel. Sometimes just trying to see why we're so different, And so Beth asks him if, he's watching anyone in particular, which he responds, just people, which reflects this observation that I'm pointing out. Adam gets nervous and stims when she invites him out for multiple reasons. 1, he doesn't know these people. 2, socializing is often undesirable, draining, or overwhelming to us. 3, the plans are on the spot and he has really no time to prepare for them. And 4, group settings are often rough for autistic people. It's a lot more pressure to maintain a group interaction, there's a lot more going on, than like a one-on-one in a lot of ways. Obviously, one-on-ones come with their own challenge, but group ones are more overwhelming. And a lot of us try to avoid them like the plague, You have to figure out how to read, multiple people, a whole dynamic, figuring out who to talk to, for how long, what to talk about, especially if you don't know these people, like that only makes it 10 times more difficult. So, he asks for like what time the meeting is so, he can plan. It's like very common for people who are autistic to need like exact details, Like neurotypicals are like very casual, whereas we come off as very formal because we have like a bunch of like details and protocol and specific things, which I think is really interesting because that's reflected right here in their dynamic. Adam is thrown into wait mode, which is basically where you know that something is going on and you can't do anything else except sit around and wait. He's fidgeting and nervously pacing, so he's planning on going to do this even though it's hard for him. And we see that the clock reads 8:11, which she said that they would be ready at like 8, which means she's 11 minutes late, which is stressing him out. Our boy is going through it. Adam is actually on the verge of a meltdown, which we can tell by his behavior and the amplified clock ticking. When we're stressed out, our sensory issues and like sensitivities tend to actually get worse. So Adam ultimately cannot go through with going out. When Beth knocks, he just stares into the mirror. This symbolizes how we as autistic people feel bad about not being able to do normal people things and our guilt that follows this. We know our failure to live up to neurotypical expectations is looked down upon. It's something constantly reinforced, which we will see as the film progresses. Adam is trying his best, but he just can't do it. He feels like he has to, like so many of us feel. Neurotypicals can't ever accommodate us. It's always the other way around. We are the ones who are disabled, and yet we still, in many circumstances, are expected to hit neurotypical markers, even without support. It's an unrealistic expectation that makes us feel like failures for something that isn't our fault. We try our best, and it isn't enough for our neurotypical peers. At the end of the day, we're left to stare in that mirror and feel shame take hold in the pit of our stomachs. Adam later explains to Beth that he got overloaded and apologizes. One of the many instances of Adam apologizing, as you will notice. This represents the constant autistic state of having to apologize over everything and for not behaving like a neurotypical, things bothering us that don't bother neurotypicals. There's a lot of apologizing that we engage in. At the end of the day, what it comes down to is that you are basically just apologizing for being autistic. That's really what it is if you actually look at it. Because everything that we apologize over is literally related to our autism. Because, being autistic is something you have to apologize for. Sarcasm. Adam is apologizing for his neurodivergence, something completely out of his control. He tried to go, he just couldn't. We are so often primed to apologize for our behavior when it falls out of neurotypical standards. It's second nature for us. We don't even stop to think about the implication of our apology. We constantly need to justify and explain away our behavior as if it's something that needs to be explained away, as if we've done something bad that requires a reason for why it's happened. It can't just be that we did something and explain it and say, I didn't do X because I got overloaded. There always has to be a sorry in there. Autistic people often connect to others through special interests. Adam already loves talking about space. So when he hears that Beth wants to know more, he runs with it. He sets up a sort of star projection in his room and says, you said you want to know more about space. After his lovely info dump about space, he immediately apologizes. Again. An autistic person apologizing for talking about their special interest. Truly an unheard of phenomenon. Truly, no autistic person in the history of being autistic has ever apologized for what they perceive as talking about their special interest too much or even at all. No, that's never happened. Autistic shame is so internalized, it's almost as if we must apologize for every movement we make and every word that comes out of our mouth. No, it's fascinating, Beth says. Once again, Beth starts off being very accepted and even acting interested in Adam. No one can ever tell for sure if she's genuinely interested. My bet is that there's a slight interest, but it over time erodes. But some part of me also wants to believe it's not really genuine. She represents the neurotypicals who gain our trust through showing us acceptance that we crave so that we do trust them. Over time, she becomes the biggest source of ableism, ironically, once she actually has to deal with Adam for an extended period of time. She represents the betrayal we feel at those who make us think they're accepting when behind the scenes and eventually to our face, they are not. Adam follows up and says, I talk too much when I get excited, which is often true when it comes to our special interest in terms of, being flat emotionally in many situations, but when it comes to our special interest, we light up. Too much, once again, is a judgment that we're putting on ourselves because everyone around us makes us feel like too much. Is it actually too much? No, that whole scene was maybe like a couple minutes. That's really not even that long, but we feel like it's too much because the people around us make us feel that way. So Beth actually insists, no, really, it's amazing. Adam, believing that she has genuine interest, since neurotypicals often pretend to be interested when they're not, says, well, I could tell you quickly about M-brain theory, to which she is like, oh no, it's okay, maybe next time, which is a hint that she just said that to be nice. She does not genuinely find it interesting. This gets Adam to let his guard down around her, though. He believes now that she's nice and someone to be trusted, which makes the later betrayal as awful for Adam as it is. We're not there yet, but, as a forewarning. Beth says, thanks, I love your planetarium. Adam says, oh, you're welcome. He's surprised, taken aback. No one usually does. Part of him may actually even have doubts that, about this, but he so badly wants to believe that she loves it. He has the most genuine smile as Beth walks away. Finally, he has someone he thinks cares about his interests when everyone else diminishes them and doesn't care. That is, except for his dad, who he no longer has, which only makes him even more desperate for someone, anyone, to show him that interest and care. Beth talks to her dad and uses the R word. Yup, she literally does. She states that only children are emotional R words. This is one of her first instances of direct ableism, and it takes place behind Adam's back, so he isn't aware. This reflects how many of those who claim to be supportive of us tell a very different story when not face to face with us, and especially when talking to other neurotypicals. We see Adam having a conversation with Harlan, Adam's friend, who is also a friend of his dad's, and they're having lunch. Adam is talking about space. Harlan tells him to speak English, once again a way for someone in Adam's life to disregard his interest. Adam tries to explain what he's talking about in pared down terms so Harlan understands, since he thinks the issue is that the wording is confusing, rather than the fact that he just doesn't care. Harlan cuts him off when he attempts to explain and says, no more space stuff. There is constant reinforcement for Adam to shut up when it comes to his special interest, leading to him constantly apologizing and adding to the internalized shame that he harbors. Harlan asserts that lunchtime is for guy talk, but Adam is a man, so on the surface level, it doesn't really make sense to say that. What Harlan really means by guy talk is neurotypical cishet patriarchal talk, which has a lot to do with the sexualization of women. Adam doesn't want to partake in this institution. He just wants to talk about space. He attempts to say, but the star tracker system, and Harlan says no, shutting him down for a final time. A woman walks by, which is a reinforcement of this neurotypical cishet patriarchy, which is a direct opposing force to neurodivergent life. And Harlan looks her up and down. Adam tries to fit in and brings up Beth, which is positively reinforced by Harlan. This serves as yet another instance of how the neurotypicals around Adam try to get him to conform to their neurotypical standards. He is given reward, praise, acknowledgement when he does something the right thing, according to them, and is punished, ignored, or insulted when he acts autistic, and diverts from norms that don't fall within the conventions of neurotypical cishet patriarchy. Adam says that Beth looked nice. Harlan takes this to mean physically attractive or hot, but Adam actually most likely means literally nice because she was being nice to him. At least, that's what it appeared. He tells Harlan that she came into his apartment, and Harlan assumes it has an intimate connotation, which is what's valued in the patriarchy. Adam says he told Beth about space, and Harlan says, oh Jesus, how did she take it? Once again, the implication that him talking about his special interest is annoying. He tells Harlan that she liked it. He doesn't realize that she doesn't. Harlan continues to reinforce the patriarchy and tells Adam that he's the man and he has to start the conversation with her. Meanwhile, Adam has never even says he wants to be with her like that, and yet this idea is pushed onto him, which is even more uncomfortable, beyond the standard sexist conventions with how Adam struggles with initiating, like many of us who are autistic do. Adam being pushed out of his comfort zone is typical and only gets worse as the movie goes on. Adam takes Harlan's advice and knocks at her door, showing how we conform to what neurotypical society instructs us and tells us is correct. We're so used to being perceived as wrong and doing everything wrong according to neurotypicals that when we receive comments like this, we accept them without question most of the time. We want to fit in. We want to belong. This is how they tell us that we can fit in and belong, so we want to do it. Adam doesn't stop and question on Harlan on why. Why, because of his gender, does that mean he has to make a move first? He defaults to neurotypical opinion on what's correct. As a result of living in a neurotypical society, we have much self-doubt, which previously mentioned author Devin Price discusses in Unmasking Autism. Some research suggests that autistic people have a diminished sense of agency. In other words, we feel less in control of ourselves and our bodies than non-autistic people do. A lifetime of being corrected for incompetence and childishness affects our self-concept and makes it hard for us to develop basic skills of self-advocacy or assertiveness. We rely on external signs of success to guide us, rather than trusting our perceptions and power of discernment. Adam is constantly infantilized around him, which does not help with this self-doubt that we just established is a huge problem when it comes to autistic people feeling like they have an autonomy in making their own decisions. He struggles to advocate for himself. Throughout the film, we see him going along with what those around him impose on him. He raises objections sometimes, but every single time he's overlooked and his discomfort is ignored. Neurotypical people often treat us how they think is best. They don't listen or ask what we need, they impose. That's why the point here from this quote about relying on external signs of success is so dangerous. As stated, Adam gets external positive reinforcement when he does something in line with neurotypical standards, and external negative reinforcement when he does something that falls out of the bounds of this. This is what leads autistic individuals to not question their distress and go along with what's acceptable. The neurodivergent quest for neurotypical acceptance is a dangerous, losing battle. You can never truly be what they want, even if you mask 24/7. Even if you hide every trait associated with your autism, the mask will eventually crack and you will not be able to sustain this long term. And is it even worth it? Is conditional love worth being 24/7 exhausted, tired, and distressed? In the words of Devin, it's as if the autistic person's own feelings and pleasure do not matter at all. Only how their life is received by others. Our feelings don't matter, and yet we sacrifice our very being for a modicum of conditional acceptance. That's what we often feel like we're worth. Surely no one could accept us as we are. That's the message we constantly receive that's reinforced by our interactions with neurotypicals. Adam doesn't think he can do better. He sees how Harlan responds to him. He sees how people at his job respond to him. He sees how everyone around him responds to him. So when Beth acts interested and willing and wanting to learn more, why would he question it? Why would he look a gift horse in the mouth? Is he not just primed to be absolutely grateful for it? Many of the same behaviors that are deemed unacceptable when someone autistic is the one doing them are perfectly fine when someone neurotypical does the same thing. This double standard is one we have become accustomed to. For instance, Adam takes Beth to the park as she whines multiple times about wanting to go back. For no reason. She doesn't have a legitimate reason to be whining, she just doesn't want to be there. Adam doesn't chide her for the complaints. However, when Adam does as much expresses he doesn't want to do something, because he's autistic and he finds socializing awful, she invalidates him and makes him seem unreasonable and makes him continue tolerating the distress that he legitimately feels, even though with her instance, she doesn't even feel distress, so it isn't exactly comparable. It's more understandable that he's complaining. However, who is looked at as unreasonable? Adam. We see that Adam has taken Beth to see the raccoons in Central Park. Autistic people often feel more comfortable with animals than people. About the raccoons, Adam remarks one of my favorite lines in the film, which, shocking that I'm saying that considering how much I hate this film, but it actually does have a good line. When talking about the raccoons, he says, "They don't really belong here, but here they are." In a single sentence of a few words, Adam articulates what it's like to be autistic in a neurotypical dominant society. We don't belong in this society that is constructed for us, and yet, here we are. That's why being boldly autistic in a society like this is such a powerful act of resistance in itself. The society we live in tries to do everything to squash autistic behaviors, from ABA to constant reinforcements of our wrongness. Not suppressing these traits, peeling off the mask, and sharing your experience as someone autistic are some of the ways you can refute neurotypical society. You shouldn't settle for tolerance at best and mistreatment at worst. You're worth so much more than that, even if the society we live in tells you the exact opposite. Adam ends up getting fired from his job. Before the words leave his boss's mouth, he refers to Adam's autism as his thing. I'm doing a lot of air quotes in this video. It's very needed. A lot of neurotypicals are very averse to the word autism. To them, they don't know how to navigate or view it as something that should be kept hidden or hushed. Or as a disease. There's many ways they view it that's not good. Nothing savory. The boss reveals that he had doubts of Adam's ability to do his job because of his autism, which is concurrent with how neurotypicals view us as incapable in many circumstances. He continues on to say, "A man of your background at the salary you're getting has been a value to this company." In other words, Adam is autistic and has highly specialized knowledge and doesn't know his worth. So they're exploiting him while he's underpaid, and when he is no longer needed, he is discarded. Smiling through the pain. A lot of us are used for our skill sets and are taken advantage of because we don't know the value of our input and labor, and also it's hard for us to recognize when we're being exploited or taken advantage of. It's easy to believe this when the society you live in is constantly reinforcing that you're worthless. Our society sets us up to accept exploitation and mistreatment at every single angle, financial, vocational, and interpersonally. Before moving on to what happens after, I want to touch on the Wikipedia article referring to him being fired, which, the Wikipedia is the bane of my existence, like most of the things about this film are. The wiki states, his fixation on detail, repetitive behaviors, and mind blindness cost him his job at a toy manufacturing company, which is just blatantly false. At work, Adam doesn't display repetitive behaviors. In fact, we hardly see him working, which is not because he's, slacking in his job. I mean to say, the film literally does not show him working a lot. That's what I mean, okay? So yeah, we hardly see him working, except when he is on screen working, he is trying his best to accomplish the tasks he's given. Mind blindness, a theory that claims that all autistic people have a lack or developmental delay of theory of mind, meaning they are unable to attribute mental states to others, has nothing to do with being fired, and is now regarded as inaccurate of a theory anyways, when it comes to autism. Lastly, Adam's fixation on detail is what makes him actually as skilled at his job as he is. For none of these reasons, Adam was fired. Why was Adam actually fired? Adam is fired because they want cheaper labor, and he no longer serves a purpose, and he's too costly. Once again, the blame falls on autistic people. It's not the shady boss who wants to cut corners. It's the autistic man who was genuinely trying to improve the products at his job and exceed expectations. That is to blame. Before I begin to talk about these next two parts, I am giving a trigger warning. Now, I don't want YouTube to take this down, so I need to speak in some coded language here. Not nice acts towards children from adults, and police brutality. I think I can say that. I don't know. Okay, we're just gonna try to be safe here and not try to get my video essay taken down. Okay, that would be not a good time. So just keep in mind, I'm going to be talking about this when it comes to what I'm about to say. So Adam tries to hold it together as he's on the verge of a meltdown. He goes to visit a school, either, to perhaps people watch or to see Beth because that's where she works. We don't really know if he knows she works there, so it's kind of hard for me to say. Those are my guesses if I had to guess why. Police come and nearly arrest him because they suspect that he's, yeah. They don't listen to him, of course, when he insists that he's not doing anything weird. It's only when Beth comes out and backs him up and they check his background that they back off. Once again, an autistic person's word is not trusted even over their own life. And there is this stereotype that specifically autistic men are insert bad thing, often. It's not like the most common stereotype ever, but it definitely exists and I've seen it. And the film plays into this by suspecting Adam of this, despite him innocently watching children from behind a fence. September 4th, 2020. Lyndon Cameron. A 13-year-old unarmed autistic boy is shot and seriously injured. Prosecutors did not criminally charge the Salt Lake City police officer who shot and injured him. May 30th, 2020. Aid al-Halak, a 32-year-old unarmed autistic Palestinian man, is shot and killed by Israeli police in East Jerusalem. March 20th, 2019. Osaz Osagi, a 29-year-old black autistic man who is experiencing a mental health crisis, is shot in State College, Pennsylvania. These are only 3 instances of many. The rate of fatal police shootings of unarmed black people in the United States is more than 3 times as high as it is among white people, finds research published online in the Journal of Epidemiology and Community Health. This is only made more dangerous when you factor autism into the equation. Conclusions of the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the BJS, reports on crimes committed against people with disabilities. The BJS report is based on data from the National Crime Victimization Survey. The abbreviation is a cross-national household survey that collects data on crimes committed against U.S. residents from over 90,000 households. The BJS found that people with disabilities were 2.5 more times likely to be the victims of a violent crime. Teenagers aged 12 to 15 had the highest rate of victimization. People with disabilities who were biracial or multiracial had higher rates of violent victimization than people with disabilities who identified as only a single race. According to the BJS, aside from people who were biracial or multiracial, people with disabilities of all races were about as equally likely to be victims of a crime. Women and men with disabilities were equally likely to be victims of a crime. People with disabilities were more than 3 times as likely to be victims of a serious crime such as rape, robbery, aggravated assault than people without disabilities. Among people with disabilities, people with cognitive disabilities had the highest rates of serious crime victimization. The problem with this is that there are very few studies on police violence against specific groups of people, such as people with disabilities. Most information we have comes from specific cases or from incidents reported in national or local news. And obviously, state and local police departments do not report every incident in which they used force against a disabled person. They don't want that on record because it looks really bad when you are using force against a literal disabled person. And cops are known to cover up what they do to people. ACAB. I tried to look up specific statistics regarding autistic people and the police. Really couldn't find anything on that. So this is the closest I have to that. December 31st, 2015, The Guardian found that 246 people, or 1 in 5 people killed by law enforcement in 2015, either had a known mental health disability or the person's mental health was somehow involved in the attack. On January 8th, 2017, The Guardian found that 1 in 5 people killed by law enforcement in 2016 either had a mental health disability or were having a mental health crisis when they were killed. The Guardian found in both articles that young men of color were the most likely demographic to be killed by law enforcement, regardless of disability. I don't have an exact number statistic. This is the closest I think we're going to get, and obviously a lot of it's not reported. It's safe to say that both anecdotally and with this study, those who are autistic, especially if they fall into other minority categories, are at risk. This is part of the reason why it's so important to normalize neurodivergence. Neurotypicals view our behavior as a threat. Their misunderstanding of us, as well as other factors, literally can lead to us dying at their hands. All of this to say, showing the police going up to Adam like that was terrifying and anger-inducing. Knowing the danger he was in, combined with their misconception that he was a insert bad word I cannot say, when he was doing literally nothing wrong. It's very representative of how we're looked at like we're doing wrong things for simply existing, how negative connotations are attributed to us over nothing. Neurotypicals attach insidious meanings to what we're doing and judge us based on this, and there's no accountability for their mischaracterizations. We may get a half-assed apology, if we're lucky, and those stereotypes become part of our canon. There is so much general misinformation and a lack of education on autism. This is why I had no idea that I was autistic for a huge part, the majority of my life. Adam finally opens up to Beth about being autistic. Here is where I'll talk about the term Asperger's, which is considered out of date, although some people still choose to use it. So you may be wondering then, well, what's the difference between autism and Asperger's? Well, there actually isn't. Asperger's is on the autism spectrum. The DSM authors wanted to avoid people thinking it was different from autism, so that's part of the reason they ended up dropping it. Generally, it was looked at as a form of autism that wasn't as severe, that was milder. Those who were considered for this term actually had socialization issues primarily. Think of your archetypes of Sheldon Cooper, that one guy from The Good Doctor, Spencer Reed. Unfortunately, this became the general perception of autism in many instances. Skinny white dude that's incredibly intelligent, but awkward and nerdy. As stated before, this idea of autism is a contributing factor of why many of us are late to realizing that they're autistic. Adam does fit into this, but he's different with how his support needs are actually much higher, and he struggles a lot to function in neurotypical society, whereas the other men mentioned don't really seem hindered. Not to mention the media where he's from is actually centered around being autistic, whereas with the other men, it's coded or not mentioned much. The creation of the term Asperger's has a dark history with connections to a certain group of people in Germany, if you know what I mean. So many people are personally uncomfortable with the term, as I am, so I will continue to refer to Adam as autistic rather than having Asperger's, but it may come up because he references the word specifically when talking to Beth, so if I say it, it's probably because I'm referencing dialogue. Adam explains to Beth that it's hard for him to know what other people are thinking, which some people with autism struggle with. Beth says she wonders what being autistic feels like, and he says, "It feels like nothing. It just is." First time I heard Adam say this, I cheered. This is part of why I love Adam as an autistic character. The feeling different, although intrinsic, almost always spawns from people around us treating us like we're different. Neurotypicals have no idea what autism actually looks like in many cases, so when you tell them you're autistic, they doubt, deny it, or claim that, well, everyone's a little autistic. God, I cringed saying that. They reveal that they view autism as some sort of alien phenomenon which has no relatability to the average person. They don't think that they could relate to any aspect of being autistic. It's not human to them. So when Beth here assumes it feels a certain way, Adam asserts that it feels like nothing. We grow up feeling this way. It's all we've known. It doesn't have a particular feeling. We're human like everyone else. It just is a thing that's a thing. It just is. And here's where Adam, the movie, confuses me. Adam's dialogue is pertinent. Hearing him say what he said, especially for 2009 standards, is impressive. So how a movie works to be so ableist towards their character, which is actually written well, and is good autistic representation, is so genuinely upsetting. We have to see this character that we see a lot of ourselves in be mistreated by literally everyone that comes in contact with them, reinforcing the hopeless autistic reality that this is what we must deal with forever. People who chastise us for talking about our special interests. People who like us conditionally. People who are enamored and interested at first, which over time turns to resentment and annoyance. People who pretend to be interested in us only for us to lower our guards so they can take advantage of us. People who treat our very existence like a problem that needs to be solved. Adam says that his brain works differently from those of neurotypicals, and yes, he actually says the word neurotypicals, which shocked me because I did not expect that. I was like, oh wow, they know terminology. That's actually shocking. And that's how I kind of knew they did some level of research, because no neurotypical is just writing the word neurotypical into a script like that. It just doesn't happen. Especially in 2009. You know, I think we can all relate to not understanding neurotypical social conventions, which seem arbitrary with no rhyme or reason to them. Adam goes on to say that most Aspies are honest. I find this ironic because honesty has always been very valued to me, and a lot of other autistic people. So much so that a personal anecdote of mine is that as a child, when everyone was choosing their divergent factions, you know, everyone was like usually dauntless or divergent or whatever, I went with candor. He says that psychologists think it's a lack of imagination, but mostly psychologies are neurotypical. Adam went off with that, okay? I'm sorry, but Adam went off with that. Adam here highlights how the people reporting and discussing autism are neurotypical, which means they often don't actually understand what autism is like. Often the information we have on autism is not accurate, as seen with the mind blindness concept. So it's really important that we have autistic people at the forefront of autistic education and conversation. When we don't, we get awful groups like Autism Speaks talking on our behalf while spreading harmful ideas about autism. Adam references Einstein and other prolific figures in history probably having Asperger's, which is reminiscent of how neurotypical society refers those who are accomplished autistics, while the average autistic is prone to mistreatment and scrutiny. Saying this creates this harmful savant stereotype that is impossible to live up to and even leads to shame within autistics who know they're not that. Adam is likely mentioning this to give credibility to autism and show that we can be accomplished too, but it unfortunately works to reinforce the savant stereotype that so many people already believe. Beth says that she understands him. Adam says oh because he's shocked and surprised. He thinks he's finally found someone to accept him. His guard is lowered. In an act of irony, the following conversation that Beth has is further evidence of her attitudes and true feelings. Beth and some random woman at the school she works at have a conversation. Beth asks what she should know about Asperger's syndrome. She gives a brief explanation, and the woman mentions how she should interview the child in question. This feeds into the stereotype that autism is a child disorder. Although yes, people are autistic as children, there's this harmful notion that children outgrow their autism. Beth follows up and says, but he's really sweet, after she clarifies that she's talking about an adult. The word but is strange. She's almost insinuating that somebody with autism isn't sweet normally, and somehow the sweetness balances out the fact that he's autistic, which is seen as a con. Beth adds that Adam is kind of interesting, which once again leads to the whole autistic people are like zoo animals to neurotypicals. Something fascinating and strange to be gawked at. The other woman says sometimes they can be quite brilliant, and contributes once more to the savant notion we talked about. She hands Beth the book Pretending to be Normal, which is apparently a first-person account of an autistic person. Beth says it's not that serious, which is strange. Is the implication that because they're not in a committed relationship that he's not worth learning about, despite being in contact with him, and probably needing to understand a fundamental part of him? Beth says, so what you're saying is that he's not prime relationship material, right? She wants fellow neurotypical validation to validate her feelings she already has, that because of being autistic, Adam is not good for a relationship. Here would be a chance to make the woman stand up for Adam and correct her if the movie was on his side. Dispute her claims. Assure her that it doesn't mean he would be bad on a relationship. She doesn't, which is how I know the movie is not for us. This is not about defending autistic people. If it was, more characters would stand up for him and dispute the ableism that's occurring in the film. The woman says, well, and Beth takes this as confirmation. Now she can discount Adam as a romantic option, so doesn't the movie end here? She clearly doesn't think he's fit for a relationship. It begs the question, why didn't she stop pursuing him at this point? She clearly doesn't see him in that way, yet she continues on with him. Dishonest. Is it because she sees Adam as a potential outlet for manipulation to get her own needs met despite not being genuine towards him? Talking about autistic people having masks is like a very common thing because we mask, but you know, neurotypicals have one too. Except their mask is acceptance. Their mask is acting like they actually accept us and they're genuine towards us when it's not. Beth has her own mask that we are coming to see. She's putting on a front to get Adam to trust her, when she is quite literally one of the last people that Adam should be trusting. And unfortunately, he doesn't know that. Adam is told that he has to move because basically he can't afford to keep the place that he's in now that his dad isn't around and he's lost his job. Adam freaks out because change is distressing to autistic people. Adam has a meltdown and hits himself, and Harlan is there to help him regulate. He doesn't speak to him in the best way, but at least Harlan tries. That's more than we can say about some people in this movie. And when the man at the office says the papers need to be notarized, Harlan makes sure they're sent over since he knows that at this point, Adam cannot handle any more of what's currently going on. However, the patronizing, almost baby-like tone that Harlan speaks to him represents the two modes of reception that we often get when we're experiencing a meltdown. Either talked to like a baby who is helpless, or told to suck it up and deal with it. Usually, actually, we get both, but at different points. Adam can't understand why he got fired. This is something we can struggle with. When we've done everything right, it's hard to understand why certain bad things still happen. We believe that if we adhere to doing the right thing, bad things won't happen. It's logical to think that, but often life doesn't abide by the same logic. Him and Beth get into a conversation about her father, and she's upset. Though she does admit that she is kind of insensitive for bringing up her own father when his father has recently died. Is her insensitivity ever mentioned? Is there any consequences for it? Does anyone in the film actually care? No, she's allowed to be insensitive, but Adam, by neurotypical standards, is not allowed to be insensitive, even though his insensitivity is usually not that, and it's literally just him being honest. So they're having this conversation about Beth's father, and Adam says, I can see that you're upset, but I don't know what to do. Often, many of us are too afraid or scared to be upfront because we know the reception we will get. So, this is actually really good communication from Adam, being honest that he doesn't understand what to do. Beth says, Adam, I'd like you to give me a hug. She wasn't direct at first, but she ends up becoming more direct. So, she gets a single prop from me. However, her tone is still patronizing, but like most of the people in this movie have a patronizing tone towards Adam. So that's really not shocking at this point. Here's the thing too. She doesn't ask Adam for consent about this hug. And I know for some people, it's not a big deal to have to ask for that. But with an autistic person, it's extremely important, especially, consent is obviously important in every context, but with someone that's autistic, many of us are touch averse or have issues around physical contact. And, she doesn't even ask if he's okay providing that. She doesn't even ask if he's comfortable with hugging her. It's just, well, I want a hug. It's always about what the neurotypical wants. It's always about what Beth wants. It's whatever they want, not what we want. As we've seen before, our needs, our wants, our desires, they're not part of the equation. They don't matter. At this point in the film, Beth's ableism and mistreatment of Adam really starts. Before going into this more, I want to talk about how those who are autistic tend to find themselves in these types of situations more than the average person. A little known fact which you probably don't know, and I didn't know either. A survey of over 1,500 individuals with autism and their caregivers by the Autism Society found that of the 35% who had been the victim of crime, yes, 35%, 13% reported to being the victim of sexual abuse, 8% of sexual assault, and 7.5% of domestic violence. And this is from the Autism Society in 2006. So the statistic could be even higher now. I wanted to know why. Why is this a thing? I didn't know this, and I really wish I had known it because it would have explained a lot for me. Fortunately, I had to go without that knowledge and just get victim blamed. So why does it happen more to us than the average person? Why are we more at a risk of this? Well, when you have a person who doubts themselves, who defaults to what those around them say, combined with a desperation for understanding connection, it is a lethal breeding ground for abusers to take advantage of us. On this, James A. Haddell on their site, The Articulate Autistic, gives some ideas, but not without a statement beforehand. Just because we have traits that may make us more of a target for abuse, this does not mean that the abuse itself is ever the fault of the victimized person. Someone who preys on the vulnerable and abuses them is always a problem, and just because autistic traits make it easier for abusers to take advantage of us doesn't mean we brought it on ourselves. On to discuss some ideas on why they believe it's easier. Summarized here, they are: we take people at their word. We can miss subtle red flags, even more so if you have a history of being abused. I added that. I didn't say that, but I know that makes it worse. Subconsciously attracting fellow misunderstood people. Susceptibility to love bombing with how desperate for connection and love we are. That was my addition as well. We are often already used to being uncomfortable. We may not know when we're uncomfortable. Financial dependence. We don't cope well with change, and we may not have anyone else. If you haven't already figured it out, a lot of this tracks for Adam. He takes Beth at her word. He assumes she is actually interested because her words say that. And he misses her tone and body language, which conveys that her interest isn't genuine. He misses her subtle red flags. Beth may feel understood when it comes to her father and her profession, so there's that check mark. He is susceptible to love bombing with how desperate for connection he is. He is used to being uncomfortable and often is made to push past being uncomfortable and tolerate the distress, so it's not any different in another context, it's just more distress. He doesn't cope well with change, and we see it at the prospect of him having to move, and he hardly has anyone in his life. He hits literally almost every mark. So Adam and Beth are out. Adam says maybe they should go. He's clearly uncomfortable, but tolerating this for Beth's sake. She's pushing for him to continue despite his clear distress and desire to not be there any longer. Beth says that their table is next instead of just leaving. She follows it up with telling Adam that he can't eat macaroni and cheese every night. As we know, mac and cheese is the same food, which is, a food that autistic people like to consistently eat. A neurotypical is policing an autistic person on their life and what they do with it when it really doesn't affect them. Adam constantly eating the same food doesn't affect her, yet it contradicts the neurotypical norm, and once again she wants to have control over him. So, as with many abusers, they just want to have control. The things they want to control don't make any sense. They don't even affect them. They just want to be controlling of them. Back to the whole contradicting the neurotypical norm, though, it's different, so it has to be changed. Adam even asks why. Why must his autistic way of life be altered? It's not hurting anyone. And she says, because it's a meager life. It lacks stimulation. No, it's not meager. You just don't understand autistic life, despite claiming to earlier. Adam doesn't even have time to register what she says here because she immediately says, thanks for coming. I know it's hard. This is what he clings to and why he can't see her being ableist, combined with how it's already hard for him to read social cues and the other factors we discussed. Here, she again claims to understand, so Adam takes her at her word, despite her actions conflicting with her words. This battle is one that those of us who have been with abusers are all too familiar with. We hear abusers talk their way out of what we believe and have ourselves convinced that they love us or that they have our best interests in mind while they actively continue to harm us. Adam and Beth sit down at the table. Adam is still uncomfortable as he looks at the menu, unsure of what to order since, he doesn't go there and he's used to his mac and cheese. Beth orders for him, which I guess is kind, but also he didn't ask, so once again she's doing something on his behalf rather than asking what he wants or just leaving in the first place like he wanted. They go outside to eat, and he's excited when he realizes what she ordered was essentially mac and cheese. Woohoo! She proceeds to act like some great hero despite her being the reason he was even in the predicament. She makes a joke, which he of course doesn't understand because autistic people can't grasp jokes. We all know that. I want to add something more to that point too that I didn't have in my script, but I think that's really common with abusers is they will often be the ones who literally put you in predicaments and then save you from the predicament and get out of it somehow, and then you feel gratitude towards them because they got you out of the predicament, while not realizing that the whole reason you were in that situation is because of them. So it makes you actually grateful for them. Really twisted shit, guys. So he tries to open up to her and says that he and his dad came out to watch Hale Bob. He is under the assumption that she will feign interest, like the first time when she listened to him talk about space. And she actually cuts him off as he starts to talk about space and says that she brought something for him. Once again, she centers conversation around herself. I, giving people the benefit of the doubt, thought that maybe she'd gotten him a space book. At this point I already hated her, but I was like, you know what, maybe she did that. Is that how she's going to try to make it up to him? She got a space book? No, I really should not have thought that. I should not have given her the benefit of the doubt. Why would Beth deserve that? No. What she got him was a book titled How to Find Work for People with Asperger's, a complete overstepping of bounds. The gift doesn't even make sense, considering prior to this Adam put in not 1, not 2, not 3, but 87 job applications. What makes you think he needs your help in finding a job and that process? Ignoring the logistics of how he put in 87 job applications in one day, putting that aside, that is clearly unneeded. You know what you could do to support him? Just, crazy idea, listen to him talk about his special interest. Be engaged. Ask questions. That's it. He would probably appreciate it 9 million times more than that overstepping bullshit you actually tried to do. But again, she imposes on what he thinks he needs, which is a guide on how to be functional in neurotypical society, because that's what matters to neurotypicals. It's being functional. It's being that. It's being neurotypical. It's being productive. I mean, this also ties into capitalism. Don't get me wrong. This is very much a capitalist thing. What matters is work, job, career. Autistic joy doesn't matter in a capitalist society. It brings no financial value to anything. That's not what we value in this society. And once again, it ties into the whole neurotypical cishet patriarchy capitalism. It's all one and the same. He asks if he's offended. He says no, which is really where I can see the neurotypical director coming through. To a neurotypical audience, which, though autistic people really like Adam as a character, clearly was the intended audience, to them, this wouldn't be offensive. Making Adam not offended by this is a subtle reinforcement that overstepping gestures like this are okay. How different would this film play out if Adam actually asserted himself before he got to his breaking point that we see later in the film? What if here Adam said, actually, yes, I think this is an overstep and I am offended. I don't need support in this way and I would rather have you do X. What if we showed an autistic character actually advocating for themselves and showing discomfort towards neurotypical gestures? Imagine how radical that would have been. But no. He actually kisses her at this point, which, let's just say, if this was me, a kiss would be the last thing happening in this scene. People-pleasing autistics know they must be okay with neurotypical gestures, even if they bother us. So perhaps Adam just says no, and he's not offended, because he knows what the alternative is. From here, Beth and Adam become official, which I think is ironic since so much about autistic communication is direct. And at this point, Beth knows this, yet there is never an establishing conversation about them being official. How Adam just knew from there that they were official when I myself was confused, I am not sure. She tells Adam that she needs time to take things slowly. They establish that no intimacy of a certain kind, you get my drift, but kissing and holding is fine. Keep this in mind. Now, nowhere are Adam's boundaries established. Only hers. In neurotypical society, we don't have any. At least we shouldn't. We don't need autonomy. We don't have that. We don't get to decide for ourselves. Everyone decides our comfortability for us, and we must tolerate whatever is decided for us. Adam goes out with Beth to a gathering of her friends. It's apparent, like every other social situation, that Adam does not want to be there. Beth says, "You can stay for an hour. You might even have fun." Adam responds and says, "Well, I'd have fun at home." This resonates deeply with me, and probably you if you're autistic as well. The amount of times that I've been forced into socialization as a child, teenager, and even as an adult, and although I eventually gained more autonomy and would start to straight up refuse to go and could actually not go, although I still do get pressure from time to time, Adam was pressured into going most likely since he is averse in most situations, yet neurotypicals pressure us into their conventions that don't work for us or that we're uncomfortable with. His conformity to being a neurotypical will only get more heightened from here. The movie sends a message that conforming to being neurotypical is the path to success as an autistic person, which of course is what a neurotypical society wants you to believe. Adam here is explicitly saying what he wants, that he can have fun at home, and he prefers that anyways. He knows how to have fun. He knows what he likes, yet Beth is imposing her idea of fun, acting like she knows what's fun for him. She is imposing the neurotypical convention of fun and assuming that that is a universal thing. She acts like she knows him better than he knows himself, contributing to the harmful notion of non-autistic individuals speaking on our behalves, like we've mentioned, as if they can do that, as if we can't be responsible for ourselves, as if we don't know what we want, as if we are just silly, helpless, dumb children who don't have opinions and thoughts of our own, and just, we have to have other people speak for us because we are not capable. Adam's wishes as an autistic person are not respected. In response to simply stating that he could have fun at home, which for many of us is true, she says, "It's not the gates of hell, Adam. It's my friends." With this, she's treating Adam as if he's being dramatic or unreasonable. Those of us who are autistic, which I'm assuming most of you are since you're watching like an hour-plus video essay on autism, have experienced this. It's distressing or uncomfortable for us gets downplayed by people who aren't in our bodies and don't experience what we do. Yet they act as the authorities on this, telling us what we're experiencing isn't that bad. There is so much neurotypical audacity that comes from being the privileged and dominant class. Them thinking that they get to do this, and of course, their peers reinforce that this is an okay thing to do. The whole premise ties into how autistic people always must compromise when it comes to interacting with neurotypicals. Hardly do they accommodate us and compromise for us. We must bend over backwards and constantly put ourselves through distress and being uncomfortable for the sake of social conventions and seeming normal. Yet for us, they won't even listen to us talk about our special interests. They won't even respect our lives as they are. They will try to enforce what they think we should be like. Imagine if the roles were reversed. If we dictated to them how they should be. If we called them weird for being how they were. At the party, this couple asks Adam and Beth if they want to see a video of their baby. Small talk like this is often painful, especially for autistic people. Adam is honest and says no, violating the social convention where you're supposed to smile, be enthusiastic, and say yes. They all stare at Adam like he just murdered someone because God forbid Adam doesn't want to see a baby video of a random baby he's never met. Adam finds himself in a conversation with a woman at the party who wants to buy a telescope, which you can imagine his excitement. He's in this horrible social situation he doesn't want to be in, and there's something about his special interest, which is like, oh my God, that's like a little relief for him. That's great. So he gets to talk about his special interest and actually be helpful at the same time. It's a win-win. Since he knows a lot, he is the perfect man for this job. As he's talking about telescopes, Beth comes over to reprimand him. Her acting as his mother and treating him like a force that needs to be contained is not at all by any means an uncommon occurrence in this movie. To get Adam to stop talking about telescopes, she yanks him. Yes, let's harshly grab the autistic person, punish him for helping someone with his knowledge that is definitely sane and normal of you. You are actually the normal and sane one, clearly, in this situation. It's clearly you. They're doing stuff like this, which happens many, many times throughout the movie. Beth is conditioning Adam to stop talking about his special interests, which he's already insecure about talking about too much. Remember when he showed her his star projections at the start of the film and said, "I talk too much when I get excited"? Back then, what did Beth say? "No, really, it's amazing." Compare these two scenes directly. Her mask of acceptance has slipped. She no longer smiles and says that talking about his special interest is amazing. She glares. She rolls her eyes. She gives the woman in the conversation with Adam a look as if to say, "Oh God, here he goes again." Over time, we become nuisances and annoying for the same things that people claim to have liked about us at the beginning. Further proof of him being conditioned to shut up about his interests is shown by him asking, "Have you heard too much about telescopes?" to the woman in the conversation. Which is even more infuriating because he literally was just trying to help someone, and yet he's still being reprimanded. I've always wondered why us being passionate is seen as weird and annoying. Devin in Unmasking Autism says something that I think is applicable, though not necessarily about special interests. I think it applies here. People find it calculating or creepy for us to put more effort into something they never grant a passing thought. For neurotypicals, they typically don't put this much immense effort and thought like we do. When I do deep dives on things, such as this video, or analyze in depth like I do, I often fear that I'm viewed as weird, same thing as being a passionate adult in fandom spaces. There is a constant fear around being perceived as weird and creepy and too much. We try to be thorough, have all the available knowledge we can to make informed decisions, which is what Adam has done and what he's trying to help her do. He knows a lot about telescopes, so he discusses the specifics of what telescopes to get so she can make the best informed decision. But unlike us, many of them don't care. In her mind, she's probably thinking, "I want a telescope," and that's it. There's a lot of thought put into it, not a lot of factors considered. It's vastly different than our thought process. Instead of Adam's extensive knowledge being valued, it's treated like something weird. Our knowledge is only good when it can be exploited by others, like we saw with his job. The woman tells Adam that what he's saying goes over her head, and so he says he will start over. This is another recurring theme in the movie. Whether or not the specific woman is bothered, I'm unsure of. I can't say for certain. Others are, though, and like Harlan, who said, "English, please," Adam listens to their words and tries to explain in simpler terms, and is treated like he's stupid or annoying for doing so, when he is just taking them at their word. That's what they imply they want, so that's what he does. What they really mean is, "I don't want to hear any more of this," but they never tell him that. So he is chastised for continuing to talk when no one will directly communicate with him, and it's put on him even though he's not the one being indirect like that and meaning something different. Of course, as always, this is on Adam rather than the people actually communicating like this. Beth pulls him away from the conversation and says that they should say goodbye to someone at the party. Adam looks crushed, defeated, and it's probably sinking in a little that Beth is different now. He might even wonder what he did wrong to make her like that, when it's not him. He's been consistent. It's her who is revealing her true nature. But like we've been taught to do, we blame ourselves. Surely, it must be our fault then, that our partners are acting differently. Surely, it must be our fault that they feel differently about us now, when really all along, they felt this way. They just did a better job of hiding it. After all of that, Beth complains to Adam that socializing looks easy for people and that she never got it. Which makes no sense because she's constantly the person to reinforce typical norms on Adam, but whatever. Does the irony of her complaining about socialization to her autistic boyfriend, who she constantly nitpicks and criticizes, need to be stated? I don't think so. It's another tactic to keep Adam thinking she understands, when it's evident to most people watching that she doesn't in the slightest. Adam looks miserable. Her words aren't starting to work anymore on maintaining the front that she's understanding. Beth goes on to talk about her book and the award it'll win someday, hypothetically. And Adam asks why she couldn't have written about the real raccoons, and says he would like the nature book better. Which is ironic because Adam earlier refuted how those with autism don't lack imagination and how that's a neurotypical misconception, yet here he's attributed to lacking imagination by preferring a real book to one that has made up stuff in it. As an autistic writer, I have a huge problem with this implication. Not that his personal preference is a problem, obviously. I just think it's kind of ironic that he says, like, we have imaginations, then is like, ugh, but the real book is better, you know what I mean? Beth reinforces the stereotype and says, yeah, you probably would like the nature book better, in the condescending Beth tone we have grown so accustomed to. She tries to say that she didn't mean what she said, which is in the top 5 of a neurotypical's favorite fallbacks when they've been ignorant. In this scene, Beth is very touchy with Adam again, without his consent, which isn't less any uncomfortable the second time around, so, yeah. Now, trigger warning for, essay type of vibes. I don't know what word to exactly classify it as, but we're gonna put it in that camp. Who thought this movie would have so many trigger warning related stuff to talk about, by the way? Like, Adam and Beth are still in bed. Adam is miserable, as we've stated. Has Beth asked Adam how he is? If he's okay? No, of course not. Instead, Beth puts Adam's hand under her shirt and touches his chest. She doesn't ask for doing so. Adam asks if she wants... Insert act, you know what I'm talking about. She says, I think I do. Does she ask back if Adam wants to? No. Adam reiterates that he thought she needed time, which is what I thought as well, and you probably thought too, as you remember. He then says, then take it very slowly. The mixed signals on top of not asking for consent. As autistic people, we feel like our autonomy is stripped from us. We feel like we don't have a voice. If we're people-pleasing autistics, saying no is difficult. We've seen this in Adam. He tries to go along with what the neurotypicals around him enforce on him, time and time again. What Beth wants is priority. In general, there's a stereotype of autistic men as virgins who are lucky to have women even look in their direction. I don't think I need to explain this. Just look at TikTok. Adam gives in and, does insert act with her. Why would he deny her? He's supposed to be lucky for the attention. And he feels like he lacks the autonomy. And he's a people pleaser. This leads to our established idea that autistic individuals are at a greater risk for abuse, with coercion being included in that. And let me just say, off the record, what she does is fucking disgusting. And the first time that I watched it, I was so goddamn appalled. I'm reading a script. I'm sticking to a script. So, my hatred towards her, you probably can't tell as much. But, oh my god, if you watched my reaction videos, there are reaction videos to this movie. Oh my god, I was fuming. You can see my anger coming out now, but I'm just trying to let you know that I condemn this shit, as if I needed to state that. But oh my god, we're really just watching this woman coerce this autistic man, and no one's talking about this. No one's saying how this is bad. Why are we not saying that this is bad? Why is this looked as cute little... I'm so done. Okay, moving on. Surprise meeting, which we later learn wasn't a surprise, so put a pin in that, between Adam, Beth, and her parents. Adam info dumps about theater, that's where the meeting is taking place. Beth eyes him again in an attempt to shut him up. Beth's father says, I used to bone up on conversation topics too when I had a date, which is hilarious because, no, it's not to impress women. That's the patriarchal cishet interpretation. In reality, he's just autistic and has an interest in theater. Can I just say as a side note, I love that Adam has multiple special interests. Misconception is that there's only one, and that's what I thought at a certain point too, so I'm really glad that they show him having multiple. Beth grabs Adam hard as he's info dumping, and Adam says, but that's enough about Cherry Lane Theater, as Beth smiles and nods. Another reinforcement that he should shut up about his special interests, increasingly growing aggressive. As if that wasn't enough, the father messes with him after this. The first time I watched this, I actually believed the father was being genuine when he said what he said. He asks Adam about the 70s. Adam starts to talk about the 70s in regards to theater, and Beth cuts him off and says that he's joking. Adam says sorry again for the... I don't know, we've lost count. The whole family participates in making a mockery out of an autistic person, treating him like a joke that everyone is in on but him. It's cruel and exemplifies a lot of the bullying that autistic kids grow up experiencing, and I think at the hands of a family unit is a really interesting commentary on how being neurodivergent messes with the typical family structure. Beth's dad is on trial, and that's the conversation that Adam overhears. Adam asks if the dad could go to jail, and Beth exclaims, Adam! God, her voice is so grating, holy fuck. He hardly asks about the situation. The dad takes an additional dig at him and says, any more questions, Mr. Prosecutor? Which is so ridiculous because Adam literally asks 2 questions, and he's not trying to prosecute him. He's trying to understand what's going on because he doesn't know their situation. So dumb, I cannot. I also didn't realize that was a dig at first, so me and Adam are once again being autistic together. The dad remarks that Adam fits right in, which is an even more crushing blow. He doesn't mean genuine acceptance, which is what Adam wants. He turns the idea of belonging into a mockery where Adam clearly doesn't fit in, yet he makes a statement which Adam may take at his word and believe it, thinking he's found further acceptance, especially into a family structure when he doesn't have his own family anymore. On the surface, like Beth, they don't outright say ableist statements to his face. They disguise it as hidden meanings and implications in their words that fellow neurotypicals will pick up on, but autistic people won't. The next shot is outside of the theater, and we hear Beth yelling. At this point, I actually thought Beth was scolding the dad. We can't see, we're just hearing her yell, so I thought she was yelling at him and scolding him for how he was with Adam because, yeah, that was not okay. Once again, I keep assuming somehow not the worst in Beth, when I should be. Once again, us well-meaning autistic people assume the best in people who don't deserve that at all. As the camera pans down, we see that Beth is actually yelling at Adam. For what? I asked myself, considering he did nothing. Beth yells, "You put him on the spot, confronted him, pushed him." Which, hang on a second, I didn't even realize this. She's chastising Adam for this stuff, which he's not actually doing. But she does the actual things that she's claiming in the statement. Like, she puts Adam on the spot. She pushes him. She doesn't think that's a problem. But when it comes to, apparently, towards her dad, which it's not actually happening, but she's perceiving it as happening, that's a problem. Once again, the double standards truly in this woman astound me. He didn't do any of these things. Literally, all he did was ask questions to figure out what was going on because he didn't know, which is what she wants. Literally, that's why I don't understand why she's so mad. She wants Adam to care, right? But he tries to care and figure out what's going on, and she gets mad. So once again, there's no winning when you're autistic. You're gonna make somebody upset no matter what you do, and that's a really common thing too. I have felt so much that no matter what I do, it's wrong, and it's gonna make people mad. Very representative of how Adam gets treated by Beth and other people in the fucking movie. Adam says that he doesn't understand what he was saying, like the father, which makes sense because he didn't know the specifics of the family situation. Not to mention the dad is shady with details. He tries to frame it like he did nothing wrong. When Adam asks him what he's accused of, the dad says, of helping a friend, which is a funny way of saying nepotism. In regards to Adam saying he didn't understand, Beth says, maybe that's not his fault. Once again, Adam is blamed for the things out of his control and also that are within reason to not understand. This man understands complex astronomy, and you think that somehow he couldn't genuinely understand this family dynamic if it was explained in an honest way? Beth underestimating Adam once again. Who is shocked? Not me, not you, not anyone. Beth says, Monday he goes to trial if you didn't get that. You don't talk about jail. Why not? Shouldn't your family prepare for the possibility? But no, they would rather uphold neurotypical conventions in which superficial and surface-level conversations are had, whereas truth of the matters are swept under the rug and not talked about. Adam says, it seemed like the important thing, which, again, he is right, yet being punished despite being right. He is time and time again treated like he's doing things wrong when it's actually the people around him doing things wrong. Beth says, all of a sudden, you know what's important. You can't say 2 words on how you feel on anything, but now you know what's important to my family. And storms off after telling Adam not to follow her. Let's unpack all of this, shall we? To treat an autistic person like they don't know what's important for any reason is just plainly ableist, treating them as if they're incompetent, unable to form their own opinions. Again, the neurotypical idea of a universal, in this case, importance is being discussed. Just because it isn't personally important to Beth, although I would argue it should be, considering the outcome of the trial determines what happens with her father, doesn't make what he's speaking on important or not. Different people can find different things important, even neurotypical or autistic, it doesn't matter. Different things are important to different people. This is common sense. The fact that I have to state this is ridiculous, quite frankly, but it's Beth we're talking about, so I must state this. Just because to her it's not important doesn't make it not actually important. She just assumes that what falls within the importance of normal standards is what's important, when really, normal doesn't mean right. It is socially constructed. Importance is subjective. It's really interesting living in neurotypical society because the more I think about it, normal is equated to morality. There is something about being right and being normal that goes hand in hand. People who do things outside of the norm are often considered weird, bad, immoral, wrong. I mean, let's look at furries. One of the most prominent examples of a subculture that has been put through hell, quite frankly, by people who don't understand it. They are constantly looked at as weird, abnormal, wrong, bad, and then people have a bunch of misconceptions about what it is, which a lot of the times are actually immoral things. I mean, people say they're deviants, other words I can't say here, just because simply they're not the norm. That is literally it. And it's the same type of thing with this. People think that somehow just whatever is normal is right. Normal is automatically right and good because that's what the society accepts. But a lot of the times what the society accepts is actually wrong. You can look at any social justice situation throughout history in which we've had progress. I mean, at one point, it was looked at as normal to do really bad things to the LGBT community. Okay, it still is. Don't get me wrong, but obviously back in the day it was worse, right? That was the norm. Does that make that right? No, but they probably thought it was right because according to them, they justified it in their head and it was right. We really have to stop this idea that normal equals good. Normal equals right. Because what even is normal? Normal is different depending on where you look in the world, what society you live in, what are the standards. It is so subjective. I mean, there are a few things that we can say that, yes, pretty much everyone would agree this thing is normal and right and good, you know? But there's so many situations where it's not. I mean, not to get into it on my Hannibal shit, but cannibalism is considered right and normal in other parts of the world. Obviously not here. In other places, it's actually a revered practice. It really depends on where you live. It's socially constructed. So adding that onto the idea of when you're neurodivergent, it is pretty much impossible for you to be normal in the sense that they want you to be. You are always going to be looked at as weird and cringe and gross and a freak and probably attributed immoral things to you. That's where these stereotypes come from, like I mentioned with the whole Adam being thought he's a insert thing earlier. Because as people who aren't normal, we get attributed bad along with it because that's what not normal means. Bad. The whole point of neurotypical society is to fit in, conform, do what you're supposed to do. But that's fucking miserable. And spoiler alert, it's miserable for neurotypicals too. It is. And yet they continue to go along with it and force it on the fucking rest of us. Back to our situation at hand. Saying that Adam can't say 2 words on how he feels is once again incorrect. Her perception on autistic people is constantly incorrect. He's expressed himself before, especially about his special interest, especially about things he doesn't want to do. He said, I'd like to have fun at home, basically. He said he likes eating mac and cheese. He's expressed himself so many times. Like, I'm sorry if you can't understand it. That is not on him. Stop putting everything on Adam. Everyone in this movie, it is not on him. You do a better job at understanding him. It is not on him. That's the crazy thing about neurotypicals. Like, they don't look inward. It's never, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. It's, no, you're weird. I don't get you. You're weird. There's something wrong with you because my lifestyle is the right, normal, correct one, and yours is the weird one. So you need to fix yourself. That is genuinely how it is. Seriously. So, yeah, maybe he hasn't expressed himself in the typical conventions that she is used to, the neurotypical conventions she is used to, but he has. That doesn't mean he hasn't. Her making this point is very ironic when we look at a scene that almost directly follows this, but first, we must try to see Beth's attempt at an apology. Who's excited for that? Beth comes over and says, I'm sorry, and gives Adam chocolate. He makes a joke, and Beth acts astonished, saying, was that a joke? Are you joking? And Adam says, you know I can joke, to the joy of autistics everywhere. Real talk, I think this has always been a really funny stereotype because, not to sound cocky, I feel like anytime I compliment myself, it's like sounding cocky when it's just like genuinely knowing this. I'm funny. I know I'm funny. I've always found it so funny that when everyone's like, autistic people cannot joke. They're just... Clearly neurotypicals are the ones that came up with that stereotype because, a lot of the funniest people I've known have been, like, some type of neurodivergent. I'm just saying, we are funnier. We are funnier, actually. I'm gonna say it. We're funnier than neurotypicals. I'm just gonna say it. Whoa, don't get me, neurotypical cops. You know what I think is really good about autistic humor that this just made me think of? Like, we're really good at, like, situational and, like, commentary stuff. I think we're really good at commenting on just how things are and how things appear and just, like, humor that's more than, like, dumb humor. Like, I feel like autistic sense of humor is, like, very... I don't know, there's something to it. Like, there's a whole thing going on. It's not just like, oh, fuck, the wife. I don't want to say it's smarter than neurotypical humor, but there's, like, more to it, if you know what I mean. Really good, witty, and, like, accurate observation stuff. So I feel like our humor a lot of times is that. It's a lot of observational humor and stuff like that. Anyways, sorry if you don't get it and you're neurotypical. Sorry that I'm funnier than you. Now this is when it gets better. We had our shitty Beth apology, which hardly I even consider an apology if we're being honest with ourselves here. What does Beth say? Because she just can't do a single fucking thing right, dude. You know what she does? She says, you can apologize too, you know. Because she just can't take full accountability. Now, turns out, what is Adam supposed to apologize for? Asking questions? Trying to show he cared about her family matters? Defending himself like he should have for once? Beth is too used to Adam's overly apologetic nature that when he doesn't do it, she expects him to and is confused. Good on Adam because he doesn't apologize. And this is something that if you're a people-pleasing autistic, you will notice. When you finally stop taking people's shit as much, even just when you start to stop, when you finally start setting boundaries, when you finally start setting up for yourself, defending yourself, actually not letting people walk all over you, I'll tell you a couple things are going to happen if you've not already experienced this firsthand. Your number of relationships is going to decrease dramatically because you're not going to put up with shit anymore. People who have seen you as this doormat figure and they're not doing it anymore, they don't see value in you anymore because that's what your value was to them, a lot of them, these using type people. So you're going to lose a lot of people. Does this mean you should not do it? I know it's hard because when you're autistic, you're already struggling to have friends and connections, but it's not worth it. You don't want these people who are just using you and like you see you as a doormat who just put up with their shit. No. So that's the thing. When you start defending yourself and setting up for yourself, people don't like that, and so they leave because they're not used to you being like that. They can't handle it. Same with here. Beth cannot handle the fact that he's not actually apologizing. He says, well, you took accountability, which is pretty much what he says. He's like, well, you said it was your fault. Because, yeah, it was her fault. So she said that, even though it was probably not her genuinely thinking it was her fault. She just thought he would, somehow apologize from that. But anyways, he actually doesn't give in. He says, no, actually, well, I'm not saying sorry. And, he didn't say he wasn't saying sorry, but he didn't say sorry, which I fucking, oh my God, I love that so much. The character development in Adam already is chef's kiss. But like I said, if you're a people-pleasing autistic, this you will notice. You will notice less people talking to you. You will lose friendships. You will lose connections because when people keep seeing you in this mode, they don't want it any other way. They want doormat you. You don't want doormat you because that is not good for you. So yeah, people will also try to push you more too, because once you're not as complacent anymore and placating, they're going to try even harder to get you to go back. Because before they didn't have to even push you, you're just doing it, taking it on. But when you actually show resistance, they are going to try to get at you even harder. So they're going to get more aggressive with it. They're going to get more intense with it probably. And so it's going to be hard to resist because you're not used to doing that, but you need to, because once they figure out that they can break you and keep pushing you into doing that mode, they are going to keep doing it. They will not stop. It doesn't get better with these people. That's the thing with fawn response and people pleasing. It's you think that by giving in more, it's going to make them somehow lessen, because you're no, it actually makes them ask for more and do more shit because they realize they can get away with it. So Beth keeps getting worse too. We notice that the relationship with Beth is progressively getting worse. It's already bad and it just keeps getting worse. Because that's how these people are. They start learning they can push and push and push, and then the bounds of what is acceptable keeps getting pushed, and the person in question who's people pleasing is desensitized over time to it because they don't even first of all notice it's happening, and they also are used to it. So it's just, and you don't see it when you're in the situation and it's gradual over time, you don't see it. You're already autistic, so you don't catch this stuff a lot already. But when it's gradual, of course you're not seeing it because you're not used to it. You're not going from this point A, Beth is so nice, to, oh my God, she's literally saying the R word. It doesn't go that drastic, so you're going to miss it a lot of the time. And that's the same thing with Adam. He, with all the factors we've talked about, is susceptible to this. And also, he doesn't see that it's getting worse because he's desensitized and also he's used to it. He doesn't see it's getting worse because he's in the situation and it's gradual. It's very hard to pick up on gradual stuff already. It's 9 million times harder when you're autistic. Circling back to the irony of Beth making the comments she did about Adam not being able to share how he feels, we witness them at some sort of park. Beth is drunk during the daytime, which we won't even comment on that. She talks a lot of shit for somebody who is day drinking. That's what I'm going to say on that. She is very judgy when this is what the fuck she's doing, but whatever. So they're talking about interviews because Adam is preparing to do job interview type situation stuff. And Adam says about the job interview people, they'll think I'm a freak. Adam is being vulnerable, something that's really hard for us with how we've constantly had to remain guarded due to our vulnerability, leading us to being taken advantage of. Adam still believes that Beth is a safe person to be vulnerable with, so he opens up. So not only is he expressing how he feels, but she claims that he just doesn't do and doesn't know how to do. He's expressing a deep-rooted autistic fear that takes a lot of courage to share. What is her response? Does she assure him that he, isn't going to be looked at as a freak? Does she say that if they think that they're just jerks who don't understand him? Does she prompt him to share more or reassure him that he's fine how he is? Well, she doesn't think that. Why would she do that, right? I think you know the answer. To that, well, actually, it's worse than you think. She could just say, some BS. No, she just totally ignores it. Look at this. Beth says, fine, whatever you say, in literally a tone like that, and then runs off as Adam chases after her. By her own admission, she does not care. She does not care enough to reassure Adam. She blows him off and leaves him to chase after her. Earlier, I mentioned how the movie sends a message that conforming to being neurotypical is the path to success for an autistic person, which, of course, is what a neurotypical society wants you to believe. This is where that notion really comes to a head. The segments now are of Adam preparing for the interviews, a representation of peak neurotypicality. Arbitrary gestures, having to maintain eye contact, forced eye contact, small talk, faked enthusiasm, not stumbling over your words. Everything must be perfect and flawless and seamless. There is no room for any signs of awkwardness. Adam must mask and conform. Beth, the main ableist force in the movie, is the one, of course, to assist with this. She's already been doing it subtly throughout. Now it's just more direct, And he actually wants her to help, I guess. He practices a lot. There's a belabored scene which honestly should be way shorter. Like, the fact that this is what they're focusing on so much in terms of scene length really once again shows the directors, like, they want to show Adam trying to be normal. Oh, because that's what he needs to do to be liked and succeed. So there's this scene like I just talking about where Adam and Beth are sitting across from each other, right? Some knockoff Hannibal bullshit. You know how like Will and Hannibal sit across from each other? If you don't know Hannibal and you're just here for the autism, ignore this part. But yeah, when like Hannibal and Will sit across from each other, it's like, I remember when I watched for the first time, I was like, this makes me miss Hannibal. Give me that shit back. So they're sitting across from each other, and Adam is mirroring whatever Beth is doing. I didn't understand what the hell was happening at first. I was watching this and I was like, what the hell is going on? But yeah, he is basically mirroring her, I guess, to be neurotypical so he can nail that job interview. And it's interesting because it's showing like a literal depiction of like mirroring and masking, which is a thing we do. It's a quite literal depiction of it happening, right? At one point, they are in bed together, and Adam says that he wants more practice. When I first saw this scene, it read very much weirdly as if he was asking for more intimacy, if you get my drift. And I understood why she was acting annoyed, because she says, Adam, can't you think about anyone but yourself for one more minute? Well, so I'm like, okay, it's like the very typical heterosexual, like, oh, the man wants and she doesn't, and he, no, that's not what Adam was. That, of course, I should have known better. I should have known my boy would not be like that, No, you know what he wanted? Her to practice more job interview training with him. Even though she's the one who quite literally offered to do this. It's the same shit. Where like, she's like, yes, tell me about your special interest, basically. And then progressively gets worse about it. Same thing with this. Yeah, I'll help you get ready for the job interviews. Then when he actually wants to do it, she acts annoyed because it's not genuine. It's not a genuine offer. It's literally just to go along with what you're supposed to do, which is the neurotypical convention. You're supposed to look at the baby pictures. You're supposed to do the thing you don't want to do. She doesn't want to do this. She's just going along with the damn neurotypical society nonsense. And of course, poor Adam doesn't fucking realize this because he's not disingenuous like this. Her saying this, by the way, is just insane. Like, telling a people-pleasing autistic that they are selfish when this entire movie you have made everything about yourself, don't respect what this person wants, don't even ask for consent, impose your BS standards on them, yet sit here and imply that they're selfish. Imply that all he thinks about is himself. This is something I've noticed very common with toxic people if you have them in your life. Like, they will call you selfish. It's, first of all, projection, but also they want to make you think that you're actually being selfish so that you don't have a single need. They think that you having any needs is selfish. Anything you want is selfish. So they will tell you this. So first of all, they don't have to do anything and they can just keep skating by like they've been doing. And so that you keep people pleasing. It's like the more that's literally how it is. I'm a people pleaser if you couldn't tell at this point, right? Like, when people have called me selfish or implied it with these toxic people, I feel so bad, and then I'm like, shrink myself down even more. Because no, I'm not selfish, and I really do, that's my mode. That's her goal here too. She wants less things to be about Adam. She doesn't like that things are genuinely about Adam. It's all supposed to be about her. So the fact that right now this is about Adam because it's about his job interview stuff, she doesn't like it. So she wants to try to get him to stop doing it, even though she's the one that said she would do it with him. We see Adam go into the interview masking. He does end up getting a job, which reinforces how we must conform and mask to have a modicum of success. Masking is shown to be the way he gets the job, meaning the bleak reality is that we often cannot be ourselves if we want to succeed. We must make sacrifices and tolerate discomfort. We cannot succeed as we are. After this, there's a scene in which Beth's mom asks Adam to look through her planner because the dad's going to jail and she basically wants to figure out where Beth is because Adam has been like waiting around to like hear from Beth so he can talk about the job interview situation. but she's not around. So the mom calls and is like, hey, where's Beth? Can you look through her planner to see if she's anywhere? Anyways, so in doing so, he finds out, coming back to this point, that Beth lied. Yep, she knew that her and Adam are going to meet up with her parents. They planned it. What does this mean? This means that she sprung an unexpected social situation on her autistic boyfriend with people he's never met who are already poised to be unaccepting towards him. Ally. She's an ally. Literally ridiculous. Like, how many autistic people out there can relate to this bullshit? How many of y'all have been there where you have been through this same fucking thing, where people have sprung unexpected social situations on you? Shit's fucked up. This is the great betrayal, where Adam realized that Beth, the person who was supposed to have his back, set him up with that uncomfortable situation. If he can't trust her, who can he trust? His world as he knows it comes crashing down around him for the second time we already witnessed with the death of his father. He feels like his entire relationship probably has been a lie. He realizes now what's been going on. Beth's understanding was an act. It's fake. He feels betrayed and stupid for believing it. But it's not his fault. It never is the fault of the person being abused, lied to, and taken advantage of. Once Adam points out that she lied, she is quick to justify and gloss over it. They really wanted to meet you. Now, will you tell me what happened? Immediately, she glosses over the betrayal. It's no big deal to her. Once again, if the roles were reversed and Adam was the one lying, she would be fuming. She would have been broken up weeks ago, right? If any of this was reversed. But it's Adam, and Adam isn't allowed to feel this way. Autistic people should just get over hurtful things that are done to them. This is such a commonly shared sentiment in our society. Adam says, "You lied," in a tone of disbelief. As established, honesty is very important to autistic people. She has violated that. She says, a little, even though it's an entire lie, not just a little. Adam has had enough. He's dealt with the ableism of Beth and the entire world surrounding him for too long. He finally snaps. "Ha ha, fooled you, dumb Adam," he yells. He's sick of people viewing him as stupid because he's autistic. He's speaking on how, as autistic people, we often get taken advantage of and viewed as easy targets and easy to fool. It's happened so much throughout the film where people haven't been genuine towards Adam and he falls for it, and the weight of that is sinking in. His intentions have been nothing but pure. We cannot say the same for the people around him. Adam gets to cathartically unleash his frustrations about his treatment as an autistic person in a way I think we all wish we could. Having to exist in a society like this is crushing. It feels like so much is aimed against your very existence, and there's no acknowledgement of it, except from fellow autistic people, which is why community is so important. Adam says that he hates Beth and that she's a liar, just like her dad. And this part makes me laugh, I'm sorry. Adam says that he hates Beth and that she's a liar, just like her dad, and hopes that he goes to jail forever. It's such a contrast to his people-pleasing ways. Adam, throughout most of this movie, conforms to what is wanted of him and doesn't raise any issues. He tries to be as people-pleasing as possible and as non-disruptive as possible, but he can't keep up the mask anymore. He finally snaps. Beth, as most neurotypicals, focus on the outburst rather than how Adam must be feeling at this moment, what he's experiencing. There's no empathy. When Adam finally speaks his mind, where he finally stands up to Beth, this is where her mask finally drops. She says, and I quote, "You're a child, Adam. Fuck Asperger's, you're a fucking child." There it is. The truth she believes, finally revealed to Adam. Her infantilizing ways of Adam are fully realized beyond just her actions. Now they're in her words too. She believes Adam is a child because he's autistic. We are called childish often. I can only imagine the pain that Adam feels as she hurls this cruelty at him and storms out. That combined with the rejection must be a lot, and it is a lot to deal with. This type of betrayal leads to immense, specifically betrayal trauma setting in autistic people. When we think someone understands us, yet turns out to be just like the rest, or even worse. At least the average person doesn't spend all of this time making us think they care and support us and understand us only to mistreat us. At least they don't give us false hope that someone could finally accept us and love us for who we are instead of working to change everything about us to fit what they deem acceptable. So we blame ourselves, like Adam. We're stupid for ending up in abusive relationships. That's our fault. We should have just left. We should have known from the start. We should have known. We should have done better. It's always on us. Us. Blamed by the same people who took away our autonomy in the first place, which leads to us tolerating abuse. Beth's comment is a sickening confirmation that we fear deep down. That no matter how kind someone appears, this is truly what they think about us. And it only takes us violating a social norm or acting too autistic to lose the conditional love that we think is unconditional. Following this, Adam talks to Harlan about the situation. Harlan gives him more damaging advice. He says he Can't trust her anymore, obviously, and Harlan says, liars is all you're ever gonna come across. Plain liars and liars worth loving. Which, even on principle, she's a plain liar. She didn't lie for any part of his benefit. She put him in an uncomfortable situation, and for what? If she wanted him to meet her parents, he would have gone along with it. He went along with tolerating the multiple social situations she'd wanted in the past, so what was the point of lying? All it did was break his trust, and the fact that Harlan is trying to put Adam back in the arms of I'll say it, an abusive woman is horrifying. In addition to the other reasons we've mentioned, of course he struggles to break free from Beth. Being told that everyone will lie, so he might as well settle for the good liars. Again, not true. Not everyone is a liar. This is reinforcing that Adam needs to put up with mistreatment. This is a hopeless outlook. We're already so used to tolerating so much distress. What's a little more, especially when this is the best we'll get? Once again, the people in Adam's life, the neurotypicals, are enforcing the idea and telling him to put up with abuse and telling him it's actually she's a good liar. They're framing their behavior and their actions as good. And like we said, autistic people constantly do this thing where we rely on the external from people. We don't listen to our own self. I mean, he knows that this is wrong. He says, well, she lied to me. He knows deep down this is wrong. And yet the people around him, who he also trusts, he trusts Harlan probably, are talking him out of it, talking him out of his own feelings, getting him to believe that somehow he should go back to Beth, even though she has shown so many times that she is the worst. What advice should Harlan have given him? Scratch that, because the people in this movie are incapable of doing that. What advice would I give Adam? What would I tell him? That he's loved as he is. That he doesn't need to change to be loved, and if he has to be, then it's not worth it. Love, based on a false idea, is not worth it. It's not worth sacrificing yourself over. Not to mention, the quality of their love isn't even good. Beth is not a good partner. Adam, you deserve someone who cares about you and the things that matter to you. Someone who doesn't invalidate you. Someone who understands you and tries to make life easier for you rather than harder. You deserve a love that makes you feel at ease, with someone that respects your boundaries and makes you feel important rather than stupid and small. And it's the same thing I would tell anyone autistic who's watching this. You don't have to settle for this, and you shouldn't. Sadly, Adam decides to try to win Beth back. There's a devastating juxtaposition between Adam going out in the winter and taking public transit and Flowers being incredibly sweet and putting himself out there over her. Meanwhile, Beth's dad has one of the most crushing dialogue moments of the entire film. You thought it couldn't get worse, didn't you? Didn't you? No, it can. And the first time that I heard this dialogue, my jaw dropped. I really was at a loss, truly. Which, at this point, the film is almost over, so you think it can't happen anymore? No, this movie is really good at making you constantly be shocked by the horrifying shit that you hear. So anyways, getting into it. I think that really represents the autistic experience. As we try hard to overcome obstacles against all odds, it's not enough. We're still looked down upon. We're treated like freaks. We're treated like children, while simultaneously being told to suck up whatever it is we're facing. In a way, we're treated like neglected children. So the father says, one more thing about Adam. She's having a conversation with her dad about if Adam is, good for her or whatever. So he says, one more thing about Adam. He's not for you. It's not his fault. Which, yeah, okay, great. It's not his fault. The one time someone says it in the movie, but they're going to follow it the most ableist bullshit, so we can't even, say anything about that. He's more like a child than anything else. He'll never be the kind of man that you can admire, that you can look up to. And it's not fair that he should hope for something that's impossible. This is the message society sends to autistic people, that we're children, even as adults. We aren't to be admired. We're to be looked down upon. That wishing to be anything else is impossible. And you know what? He's right about one thing. When it comes to shitty neurotypicals who don't understand us, yeah, it is impossible to earn their respect. Unless you act completely neurotypical or you're some kind of savant with an insane level of intelligence or talent. There's no way around it. Surprisingly, Beth argues on Adam's behalf, to which I am shocked because this comes out of nowhere. Where has this been the whole movie? I mean, it doesn't make any sense because she's been ableist the whole movie, but whatever. We're not going to talk about the character inconsistencies. We'd be here all night. She says, people with Asperger's get married. They have families, which is very ironic considering earlier on she's saying how they're not relationship material. Her randomly saying this quite literally makes no sense and makes me think she's only doing it to just oppose her dad. It's not because she actually genuinely believes it. The father says, married, he lives in another world. You don't need to make that kind of compromise, Beth. You know it's the best. Although we often do feel like our world is different from those around us and we're in a different place, it isn't a completely natural phenomenon. It's because the current world we live in is so constructed against how we work. People treat us like we're different, so it becomes internalized. Being with someone autistic is not a compromise. We're not something to settle for. We're not something you experience before you get a better and more normal partner. We're not props for neurotypical growth. We're not life lessons for neurotypicals, which ties into what Beth says at the start of the movie. She says Adam taught her about love, which, if you're asking me, is the most egregious thing. All Beth did was try to change every facet of him and get him to fit a neurotypical ideal. If that's love to you, I am seriously concerned about your idea of love. Love is not coercion or trying to change people or oppressing them or discriminating against them or mistreating them or forcing them to do things they don't want to do. When Adam finally shows up, Beth says that she thought Adam was going to hit her, which contributes to the idea that autistic people are violent, even though Adam has never displayed violent tendencies towards anyone. At most, he's hit himself during meltdowns, and that's it. Yet she claims this anyways. Not to mention, she hasn't even witnessed a meltdown, so she doesn't know about that. She's just saying this. Adam says he wants Beth to come to California with him. He got a job there, which... How we went from being broken up to moving together to California, we're not even going to get into that, because what is there to say? How? How do we go? How do we do that? They really truly are in an abusive relationship situation, because that is just... So the dad comes out to tell Beth that she is not going and she needs to help the family. And Beth tells her dad off, and Adam ends up fighting him. I'm not even going to go into all that because another mess. But yeah, so she basically tells her dad, you can't tell me what to do, Dad. And then when Adam's like, so are you coming? She's like, I don't know, we'll see. So pretty much she kind of acted like she was going to go with him, only, honestly, to spite her dad. That's it. It's not because she genuinely wanted to go. Clearly, it's because she just wanted to spite her fucking dad. Beth acts like she's going to go with Adam to California, but she still hasn't packed. Her and her mom have a conversation over the phone about Adam and the decision to go, in which Beth says, we'll never have a moment where we look into each other's eyes and know exactly what the other person's feeling. The idea of that wouldn't even make sense to him. He's never told me that he loves me. I don't know what it would mean to him if he did. Implied here is that autistic people don't know or understand love. Once again, is a really wild assumption to make. And I find it personally really funny because a lot of what I've written is actually romance. So Beth would really have a field day with me. And I'd have a field day with her, trust. I'd end up in jail. And this is quite ironic because she claims that Adam taught her about love, but now she's saying he doesn't understand love. Once again, the constant contradictions. It makes no sense. Inconsistency can probably be chalked up to bad writing, but it doesn't make it any less disgusting and a stereotype and really incorrect. And you know what? She's the one that doesn't understand love. So Beth, go look in the mirror and say that dialogue instead of saying it about Adam. So Adam has overheard the conversation and comes in and says that he loves her. Beth asks why he wants her to go to California with him. Adam says that she's a part of him. And so at first you're like, okay. And then he reveals, he says that he needs help to find a place to live and how to work and how to understand what it means when people say crazy stuff, and that he couldn't go without her. Which, it's really heartbreaking, which, first of all, if you're going to write a rom-com, we'll get to that, a rom-com about an autistic person, don't act like they can't feel love and there's no reason in which Adam could not have genuinely loved her and then went with her to California for that reason. But no, you're making it just because of practical reasons, because of course autistic people can actually love. We all know that. An autistic character can't experience that. No. It has to be for practical helping reasons. It's so offensive to me. It genuinely is so offensive that you would write this and act like Adam couldn't actually love her when, let's be real, who loves who in this situation? Is it the woman who's constantly trying to change him and be awful to him? Or is it the man who's putting up with it and trying his best to be a good boyfriend despite how hard it is for him to have relationships already? Who actually loves who? Because I think you know the answer. This harkens back to the idea that we touched on with abusive relationships, as, Adam's saying. He is dependent on her and he doesn't have anyone else. He doesn't feel like he has autonomy. He doesn't think he can make it on his own. And it's really heartbreaking as we see Adam dependent on this abusive woman who doesn't care about his well-being. And he's literally being like, you need to go with me. I need you. Thinking that he needs his abuser. It is truly so representative of what a lot of us have been, a lot of us who have been in those situations have felt like we need this person, which if you've never been abused, truly, you will never understand the fact that you feel like you need this person, but this person has made you feel dependent on them. And with your autonomy taken away, and you feel like you have no choice, and you just feel so stuck in it, and you don't feel like you have a voice, you don't feel like you're capable, this person makes you feel incapable, this person makes you feel small. It's really, if most people honestly took more than 5 minutes to actually think about abuse, they would see why people can't just leave. But anyways, it's really sad to see Adam basically pleading this abuser to go with him. That's so fucking sad. And just like with his job, Beth discards him when he is too much of a liability. Typical acceptance can only go so far. Now, am I saying that she should have gone? No, obviously not. They should not be together. But yeah, I just had to state that. I don't think they should have been together. I'm just saying she's discarding him when it's her time with Adam is up. She's got her life lesson, So she says she can't go, and Adam is crying over this. Once again, experiencing the rejection he's so used to. Not to mention, he's overwhelmed with the prospect of taking this on by himself. We are thrown to a year later. Adam is in California at his new job at the observatory. It's really sweet because he gets to teach people about space for a job. And instead of laughing at him like he's used to, the people that are there laugh with him. This makes me beyond happy for him. However, the ending in general is mixed to me. We see after he leaves the observatory, he's meeting up with everyone. He's making plans with someone. Someone's like, oh, are you going to meet up with everyone later? And he goes, yeah. I don't like the notion that autistic people being more well off, meaning to be less autistic. It's apparent that Adam is happier here. I mean, he fits in much better, but at the same time, Adam has always been shown to dislike socialization in general. So this, as progress, shows to me that the eradication of autistic traits is viewed as growth, being closer to the neurotypical ideal as seen as being better and more healed, even though it's just a different way of being. Being more social doesn't necessarily mean this is the perfect ideal. And for neurotypicals, that is the good and the right thing. So less autistic, the better. Adam gets a package, and surprise, surprise, it's Beth's fuck-ass children's book about the raccoons in the park. Yeah, remember that? Remember that shit? The book isn't about Adam, and it's essentially about him and his family as raccoons. Yeah, the family that she never even met, obviously, so I don't know how she came up with that, but sure. So the book is about him, and it even includes his quote that he said back at the start that I think it's actually the quote, oh yeah, about the raccoons don't belong here, but they're here thing. I think she actually put that in the book, but anyways. Beth uses him for book material while being awfully ableist the entire film. The end. In terms of the ending, I like that Adam gets a hopeful end where he's more at peace and in a job that resonates with him. I think it shows that at least our futures aren't as bleak as the entire movie treats them as, which is weird that it ends this way, to be honest. But at the same time, the idea that being less autistic in some aspects is key is damaging. I also think that it's incredibly unrealistic. How does Adam establish this life? As we saw before he left, he's dependent on Beth. He struggles with doing stuff by himself. Where is the struggle when it comes to managing this? Not to mention the effects of the relationship abuse on him that it would take. I don't think he's just going to be well off chilling in California, all good, being more neurotypical. That's just not realistic. And how is he independent? Literally, how do we get from point A to point B once again? And I wish the film had shown that so we know. But of course, there is no way. If they should, it would be extremely hard to show that because, like, I don't think it's realistic. I don't think the ending is realistic. And it's a happy ending, and a happy ending, I get it, but it's not realistic. We saw the horrifying realism of the ableism, though, I'll tell you that much. It's also weird because with the end where he's, like, looking at the book, at first I'm like, oh my god, he's finally offended about her. But then he, like, you wait, and then he, like, smiles and then reads it more, and I'm like, of course he's, like, not offended by the book. Oh my god, can Adam be offended by anything? He's offended, like, once the entire movie when it's his cathartic little moment, but then he's just looked at like he's crazy and violent. So it's like he just gets invalidated on that front again. Once again, Adam is the nice, autistic people pleaser who doesn't get offended at anything. Oh my god, I'm so done. Like, you wanted to write that scene better with the socialization thing. You know what he should have said? Hey, we're all meeting up later. Are you coming? No, actually, I'd prefer to stay home. Like, you should have just wrote that. Anyways, so yeah, it's just, whoo, mess.
Editing this, and I wanted to add one more thing that I thought of while watching this to edit. The whole idea that he can do this on his own contributes to the idea that autistic people don't actually need support. So, like, the fact that he was able to do that with no support by himself is near impossible. Like, that is extremely unlikely. And it really feeds into the notion that autistic people don't need help and they can just do it on their own. Even though a lot of autistic people literally do need, like, support, either substantial or at least some degree of support. Like, there is no way this man who has lived in the same place his entire life, who doesn't want to move, who can't even fathom moving in the same city, like, there is no way that man is going to be able to move across the country by himself when he's never lived alone. With no support. That's just not happening. And this idea that he got there like that is so unrealistic and really contributes to the idea that autistic people do not need support. It's like almost like the bootstraps mentality of, like, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do it. That's not possible. I'm sorry, it's just not.
The universe loves to be funny and silly and goofy with its timing. Wouldn't you agree? I filmed this whole video remembering that I had an actual stuffed raccoon that I could have put in my background. So Adam here is going to sit with me while I go over the last and final part of this. Hi, Adam. We love you so much here. Adam, I'm very excited. I didn't even like raccoons, to be honest, but now that Adam likes them, I feel like I like them now. So you may be wondering, well, how is there more? The movie's over. We're done. We finished that nightmare. Well, as I was finalizing the script for this, I was preparing to be done when I came across the director himself talking about the film. On Wiki. It was linked on Wiki, actually. So I was fucking floored. Oh, I can't wait to see this train wreck. You know, maybe the director will redeem himself and reveal that this has all just been one big advocacy film which highlights our struggles in a neurotypical world, and that's why the ableism is like that, because it's just trying to be accurate. Want to take a bet on if that's accurate before we talk about it? We are already off to a bad start because the interviewer talks about the film as a rom-com, which... Aha! I remember hearing that too, which is part of why I was so jarred when I watched it. To a neurotypical, perhaps, they consider this movie as such. A traumatized autistic person who knows of the horrors of being autistic in this society, this reads more like a horror movie than anything. The director apparently did some research, or at least listened to a singular autistic person talk about being autistic. How much research is unclear, but I assumed, like I said earlier, I figured with like the terminology and stuff being used. About Adam being written, or about the character of Adam, the director himself says this. He was talking about when he was like casting. He goes, I don't want an introverted person to play this part, basically. I think that Adam is basically, bro, he's saying basically a lot. I think that Adam is basically an extroverted person who has gotten a bit beaten down, a bit beaten down through the experience of being inappropriate, or finding out that what he said is inappropriate, or how he's behaved and that sort of thing. Watching this movie, Adam is like the definition of an introvert. So what do you mean you don't want an introverted person to play this role? I already can't with that. So yeah, many of us who are autistic are introverts. Like most of us, I would say. I'm sure there's some, obviously, that are extroverts. But most of us, I'm going to hedge my bets, are introverts, right? And also, it's not because he's been inappropriate that he's beat down, okay? Let's go there for a second. When is Adam inappropriate? Literally when? As I recall, Beth is inappropriate when she, didn't like to use consent multiple times. It seems like the director is continuing the same line of thinking that we had to endure for 99 minutes already. Adam doesn't like to be around others much because it's not comfortable for him. As he says, he'd rather stay in and have fun at home. To make the case that he's solitary simply because of his treatment is a wild claim to make. Yes, trauma can absolutely lead to self-isolation, but it's more than that. Many of us genuinely do prefer to be alone. Hearing the director say this explains the ending, since Adam isn't as beat down as much, now he's more social. Say you don't want someone introverted, once again shows that you're trying to not represent the most common autistic experience. Like I said, it is individualistic and everyone is unique, but that is the common experience. That is how most of us are. A lot of us are, at least. So to not represent that and specifically say you don't want an introvert, like, it's baffling to me. Its director wants Adam's traits to come from his experiences. It's the environment that's an issue. And that's why at the end, the environment's better. So he's less autistic. Yeah, we see his line of thinking reinforced right here. It makes sense. What he's saying makes sense for his worldview. We see that represented in what he's saying now. But still, it's not good. That is not a good line of thinking. That if you just move an autistic person to somewhere else, they're just not going to be autistic anymore. Not as autistic. Oh my God, don't even get me started on that. We don't just become less autistic because our environment is better. Neurotypicals so often want us to just be less autistic, Like, it really is. And it's like, yeah, when we are in a situation that's better for us, an environment that's better for us, we are going to be more positive. We are going to be not as stressed out and anxious and all this stuff, which could make us seem less autistic, but that doesn't actually diminish anything. Like, it doesn't make us less autistic. It just means our environment's better for us. But this movie's trying to make it seem like he's, literally less autistic. He's just doing shit that's, out of character for the autism now. No. I can only imagine how absolutely floored I was when I heard the interviewer say, I'm wondering how you decided upon what kind of woman would be drawn to Adam. How did you decide to? What kind of character was to be written for Beth? My personal field day. I waited in anticipation. Would we finally get to hear about how autistic people find themselves in abusive relationships? Would we hear the director condemn Beth and state that Adam is a cautionary tale for autistic people? No. No. We don't hear anything critical of Beth the entire interview, except that she had an issue with idealizing her family. That's your issue with Beth? And he doesn't even say that critically. He just goes, yeah, she had like a crisis with her family. That was it. Like, how are you this unaware? I don't understand. I feel like only a neurotypical could accomplish this. Like, it seems like literally that's how you know how unhinged it is, because like this seems like something that I would write if I was trying to show like just how fucked up neurotypicals were, and like I'm making them seem really fucking bad, right? So you expect for this man to be, they're all so bad to Adam, and Adam is great. Like Adam is great for the most part, with like some flaws, of course, but he's great for the most part. And then you have everyone else. So you think this literally is like a fucking satire or like something. So now at this point in the interview, you're just like, okay, yeah. So he's literally gonna be like, yeah, like if this was me and this was my movie, which I would not write it like this because I hate this movie. But I'm saying if this was me, this is when I would come in the interview and be like, yeah. So Beth was actually supposed to be a representation of like how we let our guards down, and, like these people come in and take advantage of it. No. Beth. No one talks about Beth. No one says Beth has done anything wrong. Beth hasn't even looked at critically. I'm just like, how the hell? I feel like this man did not want, I'm just shocked. So the director not only doesn't critically say anything basically about Beth, but he actually compliments her and says that she is curious. No, she's not. She literally whines when Adam takes her to the fucking park. And get this one, you guys. Please try not to laugh too hard at this one. And this is him being serious, by the way. He says that Beth has a good sense of humor. What? He also makes a point on how, like, the sense of humor is something that's, like, really important for those that have relationships who are autistic. And I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? You're not even autistic. Why are you speaking on our fucking behalf, first of all? Second of all, does he not basically say the whole movie that Adam is, like, unfunny and can't joke, but now we need a sense of humor, like, in our relationships? I don't understand. This man is, like, so inconsistent, like, his writing. Like, I see it. I really do. Yeah, he really sees just nothing wrong with how Adam was treated. You know what? Actually, most of the interview, Adam is criticized the most. Who would have predicted that? Would you have predicted that? Would you have predicted that Adam is the one that's being criticized the most? So here you go. And that was kind of important to me, in that I did want people to be intrigued and sort of leaning forward and trying to figure it out, and then get him to know a little bit just as a person before you put a label on him, because a label tends to become just that. You know, the person just then becomes a label if you sort of learn about it too soon. And that's actually an issue in the Asperger community. He's speaking on this now for us too, about when to divulge your diagnosis to neurotypicals. This is so funny to me. He's talking about the fact of like Adam's label, and he's saying he wanted us to be intrigued with Adam before we knew he was autistic. First of all, I knew from the start that he was autistic. I'm just swag like that. I don't know what to tell you. Obviously he's autistic. I got that fucking autistic radar, bitch. Anyways, this reminds me of how too often neurotypicals try to distance us from our label of being autistic. That's why we advocate for autistic person rather than person with autism. It's an integral part of our identity. It affects most, if not all, aspects of one's life. This is even more important for those of us who went our entire lives without knowing. Having a label for what I am rather than thinking I'm broken and there's something wrong with me. Not to say I still don't think this at times, but before I had no idea. I just had all of these symptoms without a name for it, and everyone around me treated me like I was crazy and dramatic and all these other terms that end up being leveraged against us. It's just yet another example of neurotypical trying to be like, you are not your label, even though our label is key to who we are. And a lot of us are actually proud of it. Just like annoying how they're like, you're not your label, when it's like literally a core part of who you are. And why is it a bad thing? Why is it a bad thing to be your, like, okay, I'm autistic, like, why is it a bad thing to just be like, oh, well, you're more than your label? It's like, yes, just because you identify with a label doesn't mean you're not more than that. No one is saying that by saying autistic person. Anyways, it's just, once again, neurotypical audacity, but we're used to it at this point. This is when it gets fucking wild, by the way, okay? So in a quote discussing Adam and joking, specifically the chocolate scene, I think, the director says, I'm not even kidding, guys, I'm not even kidding. He literally says, and I quote, I mean, he is reminding Beth gently that he is not our word, you know? So if you needed any further confirmation of the ableism of this movie, let's be real, you didn't. But hearing him actually say the fucking R slur, yeah, that explains why Beth uses it in the film too. Yeah, actually. In the same way that you just think it can't keep getting worse, this man is very consistent from his interviews to his movies. It's like you just think it can't get any worse. No, actually, it does get worse than a fucking slur, so. Now, they're talking about the reason for creating this film. So this is where we get the reveal. This had me fucking gagged, okay? This had me gagged. So the interviewer says, you know, the other interesting thing, I mean, you were saying that in some respects, the difficulties with Asperger's are sort of a metaphor for the difficulties of people in a relationship, or people in relationships. I'm sorry. What? 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 Autistic people are not your metaphor fuel. We will revisit this, trust me. We all will be revisiting this. Oh, we will be, okay? After we discuss some more troubling things that were tacked onto the sentence, we gotta go to that first, though. The interview continues and says, you know, we all want to connect and communicate, but it's hard and we struggle with it. The other thing that has struck me here was the fact that Adam, you know, he has no filters. I mean, he's just tactlessly honest. He has no interest, for example, in her friend's baby pictures. Therefore, kind of insults them. And it struck me that a lot of women who think that their guys are kind of tactless and insensitive and clueless probably looking at this thinking, actually, I wonder if my boyfriend has Asperger's. I don't even know where to begin. Honestly, that was a lot. That was a lot. And I already heard this quote before. I can imagine you're feeling the same way as I felt the first time when I heard that. Just like, at a fucking loss. Because some of these people, all you can do is just, what? What are you saying? So let's unpack that train wreck clusterfuck. I've been doing this entire film. Let's tear this man to pieces, shall we? So you as a neurotypical don't understand the struggle for connection that those who are autistic face. To use our neurodivergency as a metaphor to show how you feel as a neurotypical is truly an act of neurotypical audacity if I've ever seen a display of one. To say that Adam insulted the friend's baby pictures by simply not wanting to see them is yet another neurotypical interpretation of our actions that aren't insulting. Not wanting to see something is not an insult. Why is so much of neurotypical society why is so much of it just against boundaries and tolerating stuff that you don't want to for the sake of social conventions? That is exhausting. The quote only gets worse when the interviewer tries to insinuate that insensitive boyfriends are actually autistic. To tie being autistic to being insensitive is exactly how Beth and neurotypicals view us. Meanwhile, it is the exact opposite. Adam and many of us are people pleasers and who try not to offend people. Adam tolerates situations he doesn't even want to be in for the sake of Beth, to make her happy. It's only when he eventually snaps, quite frankly, way later than he should, that he stops doing that. To call Adam insensitive simply because he didn't want to participate in neurotypical notions is exactly on brand for this film and our society. Shitty boyfriends are not autistic. Plenty of us are dedicated and thoughtful partners. And most thoughtless partners are actually, shocking, neurotypical. Look at Beth. Look at Beth. I'm sure many of you out there have had shitty partners and they weren't neurodivergent. To tie that to being neurodivergent, I cannot. I still am not over the fact that he's literally out here saying that it's a metaphor. Bitch, what the fuck? We can't have shit. Like, we can't have shit. Autism is a metaphor for neurotypical relationships? No, the fuck it's not. That makes no sense because they're fundamentally different too. You know, these neurotypicals try so hard to make us feel different than them, yet they're gonna use us as a metaphor for them. Y'all are the ones out here like, y'all are so different. You're not even human. But now we're apparently a metaphor for y'all? Come up with your own fucking metaphor, bitch. Damn. The director on this says, I think a lot of men would identify with Adam, saying, but you said it was your fault, so why would I apologize? Though in actual situations, a lot of times in cis-het relationships, the men are genuinely refusing to take accountability, because that's how they're socialized often. So here we have neurotypical people applying their relationship dynamics incorrectly to a situation involving an autistic person. In the situation in the movie, Adam genuinely was not at fault. Beth literally went off on him over asking her dad genuine questions about what was going on. Autistic people do not serve as justification for shitty neurotypical behavior, especially when the circumstances are not the same. Beth is doing what abusers do and trying to get those they're abusing to take responsibility for their bullshit. It is not the same, and it's not going to be your justification for identifying with him. No. Y'all, men, cis-het men, most of y'all, don't need any more excuses, okay? You guys make enough of them on your own. I swear to God, you're not going to use an autistic man who was not in the wrong for that. Holy fuck, I am so done. This part, once again, I am just wait for this, because this had me, So the interviewer says, I wonder if this film, gets attention. I mean, do you feel the presence of advocates for Asperger's out there, ready to either pounce on something in the film that you got wrong or make you a champion for their cause? I'm telling you right now, this man is lucky that I was not watching this at the time of its release. I mean, like, I would not have been able to understand it at my young age. But oh my god, if I was at this age when this came out, oh bro, oh my god. You guys, you think we can get this man to see this video? There's no shot of that. But I hope to god he stumbles upon this one day. He'll cry himself to sleep. I think he probably doesn't make movies anymore because I don't think he's that good. But I think he will cry himself to sleep. I think he will cry himself to sleep because, like, he will never want to create another piece of media ever again. And you know what? If this is what you're going to create, good. He says, so he mentions how he would get nervous every time someone autistic would stand up and talk and give their opinion. Wonder why you would be nervous. Is it because you made a film capitalizing on our neurodivergence that was meant to be a metaphor and was horribly ableist? Surely it can't be that. Says that because you know that you're going to get the straight dope. Weird way of putting that. Basically because there isn't the same kind of filter. Or, God, why do they say basically so much? Damn, like, are you a California teenage girl? What's going on here? They're not really invested in being charitable. No, we're not. Why do you treat that like it's a bad thing, as you've been doing? Or, assuaging my insecurities or whatever. I truly do wonder what he would be insecure over. All I know is when I'm proud of what I've created, I don't really say that I have my heart in my throat about my creation. I love this too. It's like he knew he was doing shit wrong. That's why he's like waiting for people to say some bad shit about it. Sadly, I wasn't there and I couldn't. Otherwise, I would have had so much to say, bro. I would have just got up to the stand, played my video, and be like, all right, sit down for an hour plus. Watch it. Here's your input. Like, I'm serious. Like, dude, he thinks his input, like, he was scared of that. You need to be scared of me, bro. You need to be scared of me. I tore your fucking movie apart from start to end. And your interview. Be afraid. He goes on to say that the reception was gratifying, which I find hard to believe personally, that not a single person saw an issue with this film. I'm gonna say some people probably had a problem with it, but he's just not gonna bring it up. And just be like, yeah, they all loved it, guys. No, source, trust me, bro. My brain, okay? They loved it. Wouldn't be the first time he spoke for autistic people. Or the last. However, okay, the nail in the coffin comes near the end when he says, I feel a little bit like a fraud. Because as I said, that's not why I made the movie. I made the movie, sort of, to talk about relationships in my own and other people's. And use Asperger's wanting to be accurate about it. But if it has the byproduct of making our neurotypical world a little bit more interested and compassionate and, valuing of that community, that's a great thing. You have it. This movie was not made for us by the director's own admission. It wasn't some great societal commentary on the autistic experience, which I had the urge to frame it as at points, but sometimes fucked up shit is just fucked up shit. It's not that thoughtful, which, yeah, I think that exemplifies being autistic. I had the urge to read into it and spin it positively, just like Adam tried to do so many times. Even our very condition we often struggle with is used for neurotypicals to talk about themselves. Can we not have anything to ourselves? I've personally witnessed people who aren't autistic trying to use our terms. It seems like so often everything about us is taken from us and appropriated and scrutinized. All at once, somehow. In a way, I think the director himself is representative of Beth. Like Beth, he uses the life of someone autistic for his own purposes, his own gain, for neurotypical development, growth, and exploration. Adam is treated horribly and there's no one held accountable. No one defends him. No one sticks up for him. No one calls out the horrific ableism and abuse that he faces. Beth perpetuates it, and so does the director. They both act like they're well-meaning individuals who don't look at what they're actually doing. They don't see the harm in their actions. We are not a byproduct. This is why autistic creators being in charge of autistic depictions are so important. We deserve better than this horrifying experience of autistic trauma being played out on the screen as we are helpless to watch, just like how it is when it happens to us directly, you know? We deserve love stories that aren't abuse, the same love stories that neurotypicals get. We may come from different worlds, but that doesn't mean we should be looked down upon or treated any differently. We deserve the same respect. We shouldn't have to get used to mistreatment, discomfort, mockery, abuse. Autistic people deserve to be happy on the screen and in real life. Adam the film unintentionally shows the bleak reality that many of us face as autistic people. Films like this reinforce many of the ableist sentiments that run as constant threads throughout our society. Do I think you should watch this movie? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Don't watch this movie. Literally do not. I'm telling you right now, don't. Don't watch it. Literally don't. I found this movie horrific and disgusting. The first time I saw it, I was absolutely enraged and horrified. What you should do instead is embrace your autism and live boldly and autistically in a society where that is a radical act. The final question of the video. Why did I make this? Besides the fact that I can do a lot of things out of spite, I wanted to use this movie as a jumping off point for talking about the ableism that we as autistic people face. And it's in the movie right there. It's on our screen. Watching this movie is like literally watching real life. So, and you know what? Me and the director share a common motivation, you know? I just think it's just, I made this simply just, to make the neurotypical world just more compassionate towards us.